Tonight, we explore the theme of ordinary mind, a Zen teaching that points to something so simple it is easy to miss. We often think peace is something we have to chase. We think we need to change who we are to find it. But the ancient masters discovered that peace is right here, in the most common moments of our lives. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. The teaching of ordinary mind suggests that you do not need to change a single thing to find what you are looking for. It suggests that this moment, exactly as it is, already contains everything we are seeking. Not because we make it special, but because we stop insisting it should be something other than what it is. As we move through these teachings tonight, you may find yourself settling naturally into the present moment. Not because you are trying to achieve anything, but because these ancient wisdoms remind us of what we already know. The stories will unfold gently, each one revealing a different side of this simple truth. We are not seeking anything extraordinary tonight. We are simply discovering the profound peace that lives in the most ordinary corners of our daily lives. Settle in and let's begin this journey together. There is a famous teaching in Zen that sounds almost too simple to contain wisdom. When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. When it rains, open your umbrella. This is called ordinary mind. At first, these words might seem pointless. Of course we eat when hungry. What else would we do? But look more closely at how we actually live. When hungry, we often delay eating while finishing one more task. When tired, we push through with stimulants and willpower. When it rains, we curse the weather instead of simply staying dry. We have learned to override our natural responses, to complicate what is simple, to think about life instead of living it. We carry elaborate ideas about what we should do, how we should be, what proper spiritual practice looks like. These ideas pile up until we can no longer hear the quiet voice of natural response. Ordinary mind points to something beneath all this complication. A way of being that responds to life directly, without the interference of endless thinking. Not the thoughtlessness of animals, but the natural wisdom of a mind that knows what to do without making a problem of it. When we return to this natural way, life becomes simpler. Not because we stop thinking altogether, but because we stop letting our thinking prevent us from responding appropriately to what is actually happening. Let us explore a story that shows this truth. There once lived a scholar named Koro, who had devoted 20 years to studying Buddhist texts. He had read every sutra he could find. He practiced complex meditation techniques he had learned from various teachers. His days were filled with spiritual exercises designed to purify his mind and lead him toward enlightenment. Each morning, Koro would wake before dawn and spend an hour in breathing practices. He would count each breath, maintain specific postures, visualize colored lights moving through his body. Then he would sit in meditation for 2 hours, observing his thoughts according to a precise method he had learned from a famous master. After that, he would chant specific mantras exactly 108 times. His breakfast was eaten according to particular rules about mindfulness and gratitude. He would contemplate each grain of rice for several breaths before placing it in his mouth. Every activity in his day had a prescribed method, a correct form, a spiritual significance. Despite all this effort, Koro felt increasingly tired and anxious. He was never sure if he was doing the practices correctly. He worried that missing even one session might set back his progress. He lay awake at night thinking about whether he had been truly mindful during the day or merely going through the motions. The weight of his spiritual obligations pressed on him constantly. His wife would sometimes say, "You seem more troubled now than before you began all this practice." But Koro would tell her she did not understand the importance of spiritual discipline. The path to enlightenment required dedication and effort. Any discomfort was just part of purification. One autumn, Koro decided to visit a hermit who lived in a small hut deep in the mountains. He had heard that this hermit, an old man named Lin, possessed genuine wisdom. Perhaps Lin could tell him which practices to focus on, which texts held the most important teachings, how to accelerate his spiritual progress. The journey took 2 days. When Koro finally found the small hut, he saw Lin sitting outside on a rough wooden stool. The old man looked up and smiled. "Welcome, friend. You look exhausted." Koro was exhausted. The long walk, combined with his constant worry about maintaining his practice schedule on the road, had drained him. "I have come seeking guidance," he said, bowing respectfully. "I practice diligently, but I feel farther from peace than when I began." Lin nodded and stood slowly. "Come inside. You must be hungry." The hut was simple. A sleeping mat in one corner, a small fire pit, a few cooking vessels, no altar, no meditation cushions, no religious texts, no incense burner or prayer beads. Nothing that suggested a spiritual practitioner lived here. This surprised Koro. How could a wise hermit live without the tools of practice? Lin began preparing a simple meal. He washed rice in a wooden bowl, swirling his hand through the water to remove dust and chaff. He cut vegetables he had gathered from the forest. Mushrooms, wild greens, a few root vegetables. He moved without hurry, without ceremony, simply doing what needed to be done. There was no elaborate mindfulness, no dramatic presence, no careful attention to each movement as Koro had been taught. Just an old man making food because someone was hungry. As the rice cooked, Lin poured tea for both of them. The tea was plain, served in simple clay cups. "Tell me about your practice," he said. Koro described his elaborate schedule, the hours of meditation, the breathing techniques, the mantras, the mindful eating, the visualization practices, the prostrations, the study sessions. He explained how he contemplated the Four Noble Truths each evening, how he reflected on impermanence throughout the day, how he tried to maintain awareness of each action. As he spoke, he realized how complicated it all sounded, how exhausting even the description was. Lin listened quietly, sipping his tea. He showed no reaction, no judgment, just patient listening. When Koro finished, the old man was silent for a moment, looking into his cup. Then he asked, "When you are hungry, do you eat?" "Well, yes, but I must eat mindfully. I must contemplate the source of the food, the labor that went into its production, the impermanence of all things. I must maintain awareness of each bite, counting my chews, observing the sensation." Lin held up a hand gently. "When you are hungry, do you eat?" Koro felt confused. "I just explained how I eat, with full awareness and proper technique." "That is not what I asked. When you are hungry, do you eat? Or do you perform elaborate rituals around eating while hunger remains? Something in Koro became defensive. Eating mindfully is important practice. Many teachers emphasize this. The sutras speak of right action and mindful consumption. Lin smiled, but there was a sadness in his eyes. The Buddha ate when he was hungry. He did not make eating into a complicated performance. He simply nourished his body so he could continue his work. He gestured to the rice, which was now ready. "Let us eat." Lin served the food in simple wooden bowls. He began eating without ceremony, without elaborate attention, just eating because he was hungry. Koro watched, uncertain. Should he not bless the food first? Count his breaths? Maintain special awareness? "Eat," Lin said gently. "The rice is getting cold." Koro took a bite. The rice was perfectly cooked, slightly sweet. The vegetables were tender. He found himself actually tasting the food instead of monitoring his mind's response to tasting the food. He was simply eating because he was hungry. And it was satisfying in a way his elaborate mindful meals had not been for years. They ate in comfortable silence. When they finished, Lin collected the bowls and washed them in a bucket of water. Again, no ceremony. Just cleaning dishes because they needed cleaning. "I don't understand," Koro said. "Is this your practice? Just living? What else is there?" Lin replied, "When dishes are dirty, I wash them. When I am tired, I sleep. When the garden needs weeding, I weed. When a visitor comes, I make tea. Where in this is there room for anything other than practice? But surely you meditate. Study the teachings. Cultivate your mind." Lin sat down on his stool. "I sit quietly sometimes, but I do not sit to achieve anything or become someone special. I sit because sitting feels right in that moment. I read old poems occasionally because they give me pleasure, but I do not study to accumulate knowledge. When I need wisdom, it comes. When I need understanding, it arises. Not because I have stored up teachings, but because I am here, responding to what is actually happening." He looked at Koro with kind eyes. "You have made life very complicated. You have turned every simple action into a spiritual exercise. You have placed yourself under a mountain of obligation. No wonder you are exhausted. You are no longer living. You are performing elaborate ideas about how to live." Koro felt something crack inside him. "But if I stop all my practices, how will I make progress? How will I achieve enlightenment?" Do you think enlightenment is something you manufacture through effort? That if you do enough special practices, you will earn it like a wage? Lin shook his head gently. Your natural mind already knows what to do. When hungry, it says eat. When tired, it says sleep. But you have buried it under so many complicated ideas that you can no longer hear its voice. He stood and walked to the door of the hut, looking out at the forest. Stay with me for a few days. Do not practice anything. Just live. Eat when hungry. Sleep when tired. Walk when you feel like walking. Sit when you feel like sitting. See what happens when you stop trying so hard to be spiritual. Koro stayed for 5 days. At first, it felt almost frightening to abandon his routines. His mind kept telling him he should be practicing, that he was wasting time, that he was falling behind in his spiritual progress. The first morning, he woke at his usual early hour and sat up, ready to begin his breathing exercises. But Lin was still asleep, snoring softly. Should Koro wake him? Or practice alone? Instead, Koro lay back down. His body was still tired, so he slept. When he woke again, sunlight was streaming through gaps in the wall. He felt rested in a way he had not felt in years. Lin was already outside, and Koro found him sitting on his stool, watching mist rise from the valley below. The old man did not acknowledge Koro's arrival. He simply sat, tea in hand, looking at the morning. Koro sat nearby on a flat stone. They stayed that way for a long time, neither speaking, just watching the world wake up. Eventually Lin stood and went inside. He made simple rice porridge. They ate without ceremony. When Koro started to contemplate the source of the rice, Lin caught his eye and smiled gently. Koro let the thought go and just ate because he was hungry. The days passed in this way. Lin simply went about his life. He gathered firewood when the pile grew low. He tended his small garden, pulling weeds and checking the vegetables. He cooked simple meals when hungry. He sat outside watching the light change through the trees. Sometimes he hummed quietly to himself. Sometimes he napped in the afternoon sun. There was no drama in any of it. No significance. Just an old man living in the mountains, doing what needed doing, responding to each moment without complication. On the third day, Koro woke and felt genuinely rested for the first time in years. He had slept when he was tired instead of getting up early to practice. He had eaten a simple breakfast when he was hungry instead of following elaborate rituals. He went outside and helped Lin collect mushrooms in the forest. They walked quietly, occasionally pointing out interesting fungi to each other. The morning air was cool and clean. Birds called from high branches. Nothing special was happening. Yet Koro felt more peaceful than during any of his intense meditation sessions. "Lin," he said as they walked, "may I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever sit in formal meditation?" "Sometimes, when it feels right." "Usually in the evening after the day's work is done." "I sit because sitting quietly feels good, not because I am trying to achieve anything." "Do you study the sutras?" "I read them occasionally, the way one might read poetry. For the beauty of the words, for the pleasure of contemplating ideas. But I do not study them as if they contain secrets I must unlock. The wisdom they point to is already here." He gestured around at the forest. "In this, in breathing, in walking, in eating when hungry." That evening, sitting by the fire, Koro said, "I think I am beginning to understand. I have been making life into a problem that needs solving through spiritual techniques. But life is not a problem. It is just life. It tells me what it needs. I only have to listen and respond." Lin nodded. "Your ordinary mind is wiser than all your complicated practices. It has always known what to do. You only needed to stop interfering with it." When Koro returned home, he put away most of his practice texts. He kept a simple life. When hungry, he ate. When tired, he slept. When work needed doing, he did it. When rest felt right, he rested. He stopped carrying the burden of elaborate spiritual striving. And in letting go of that burden, he found the peace he had been seeking through 20 years of complicated effort. This story shows us something essential about ordinary mind. Koro's practices were not wrong in themselves, but he had used them to replace natural living with complicated spiritual performance. He had stopped listening to his own wisdom and instead followed endless rules about proper practice. The old Zen masters spoke of this trap. They warned that meditation can become another form of grasping, that mindfulness can become another burden. Buddhism teaches that the path is not about adding more and more practices, but about removing the obstacles that prevent us from seeing clearly. Ordinary mind is not about abandoning all thought or living like animals. It is about letting our natural wisdom guide us, instead of burying it under layers of complicated ideas about how we should be. Lin still thought, still made decisions, still lived as a human. But his thinking served life instead of replacing it. The Buddha once said that he taught only one thing: suffering and the end of suffering. Koro's elaborate practices had created more suffering, not less. When he learned to simply live, responding naturally to each moment, the suffering lifted. Not because he achieved something special, but because he stopped creating problems where none existed. Let us explore another story that reveals a different aspect of this teaching. There was once a farmer named Hisa who worked a small plot of land on the outskirts of a village. Each day, she would rise with the sun and tend her crops. She planted seeds in spring, pressing each one gently into prepared soil. She watered and weeded through summer, her hands learning the difference between young vegetable shoots and invasive plants. She harvested in autumn, gathering what the earth had produced. She rested in winter, repairing tools and planning for the coming year. Her life followed the rhythms of the seasons and the needs of the land. Hisa had a neighbor, a merchant named Iko, who had recently become interested in spiritual practice. He had sold some of his business interests and now had time for what he called his inner development. He would often visit Hisa and talk about the meditation retreats he attended, the teachings he was studying, the techniques he was learning to purify his mind. One afternoon, Iko came to Hisa's field and found her pulling weeds under the hot sun. Her hands were stained with soil. Sweat dampened her hair. She worked methodically, moving down each row with patient attention. Iko had just returned from a 10-day silent meditation retreat at a temple in the mountains. He was eager to share what he had learned. "Hisa, you should come to these retreats," he said. "I have learned methods for achieving inner peace." The teacher showed us how to observe our thoughts without attachment, how to cultivate equanimity in the face of all experience, how to transcend the ordinary mind and touch something higher. Hisa continued pulling weeds as she listened. Her hands moved steadily through the rows of vegetables. "That sounds interesting," she said without looking up. "You seem so calm, Hisa. But imagine how peaceful you could be if you learned these techniques. You could achieve real liberation, not just ordinary contentment." Hisa sat back on her heels and wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. She looked at Iko, who stood at the edge of the field in clean robes, having washed off all traces of the world before beginning his spiritual journey. "What is wrong with ordinary contentment?" she asked. "Nothing is wrong with it. But there are higher states available, states of bliss and clarity beyond normal experience. Don't you want to achieve something extraordinary? Heza looked at the vegetables growing in neat rows, beans climbing their supports, squash spreading their broad leaves, radishes pushing up through the soil. She looked at the rich, dark soil, alive with earthworms and beetles. She looked at her hands, stained with earth and scarred from years of work. When I wake each morning, I feel what needs doing. The plants tell me if they need water. The soil tells me if it needs turning. My body tells me when to rest. I do not fight against what is happening. I do not wish things were different. I simply respond to what each day asks of me. Where in this would I fit your special states? Iko felt frustrated. Heza was missing the point. She was so caught in the mundane that she could not see the possibility of transcendence. But you are just living an ordinary life, planting and weeding and harvesting, the same thing every day. Where is the spiritual depth in that? What could be deeper than this? Heza asked simply. She held up a handful of soil. In this soil, life grows. Seeds become food. Food becomes strength. Strength becomes work. Work becomes food again. I am part of this circle. When I plant, I am completely planting. When I harvest, I am completely harvesting. My mind does not wander to other places or times. It is here, doing what is needed. Is this not peace? But you have not transcended anything. You are still caught in ordinary consciousness. Heza smiled and returned to her weeding. Perhaps your extraordinary states are what keep you from being fully here. You go on retreats to find peace instead of being peaceful where you are. You learn techniques to achieve calm instead of simply being calm. You seek higher states instead of fully inhabiting this one. She pulled another weed, examining its roots before tossing it aside. I do not need to transcend my ordinary mind. My ordinary mind, when I do not interfere with it, knows exactly what to do. It tends these vegetables. It rests when tired. It eats when hungry. It responds to rain by seeking shelter and to sun by feeling grateful. What more is there? Iko opened his mouth to argue but found he had no response. He looked at Heza, her hands in the soil, her attention completely absorbed in the simple task of removing weeds. There was something in her presence that his meditation retreats had not given him. A quality of being fully where she was, doing what she was doing, without any part of her wishing to be elsewhere or become someone other than who she was. But don't you ever want something more? He asked quietly. More than what? More than food growing in good soil? More than the sun on my face? More than honest work that serves life? What would be more than this? Iko sat down at the edge of the field. He thought about his meditation retreats, always seeking states of consciousness beyond his normal awareness, always trying to achieve something special, always feeling that his ordinary life was somehow lacking, something to be transcended through spiritual practice. Even during the retreat, he had spent much of his time thinking about how peaceful he would be once he truly mastered the techniques, always reaching for something just beyond his grasp. I think, he said slowly, that I have been running away from my life instead of living it. I keep going on these retreats because I believe that peace is somewhere other than here. That wisdom is something other than responding naturally to what is in front of me. Heza nodded. The retreats may help some people, but for me, This field is my retreat. These vegetables are my teachers. My practice is simply tending what needs tending, not seeking anything beyond this, not achieving special states, just being here, hands in the soil, doing what the day asks. She pulled another weed and tossed it aside. When you are ready, you are welcome to help me. Sometimes the best teaching is just working together in silence. Iko took off his outer robe, which was too fine for field work. He knelt beside Hisa and began pulling weeds. At first, his mind was busy comparing this simple work to his sophisticated meditation practices. This was just manual labor. How could it compare to the profound insights he had glimpsed during retreat? His teachers had spoken of enlightenment, of liberation from the cycle of birth and death. What did pulling weeds have to do with such lofty goals? But gradually, as the afternoon sun moved across the sky, something shifted. His hands learned to distinguish weeds from vegetables. He found a rhythm in the work. Reach, grasp, pull, toss. Reach, grasp, pull, toss. The repetition became almost meditative. His thoughts slowed. The constant commentary in his mind about whether he was doing it right, whether this was valuable use of his time, whether he was making spiritual progress, all of that began to quiet. He noticed things. The way the soil smelled after being disturbed, rich and dark. The satisfaction of clearing a row and seeing the vegetables standing free. The coolness of the earth on his hands. The ache in his back from bending. The slight breeze that offered relief from the heat. He was not thinking about any of this. He was simply experiencing it. When the sun began to set and Hisa finally sat back, Iko realized hours had gone by. He had not thought once about achieving special states or transcending ordinary consciousness. He had just been here, pulling weeds, his mind absorbed in simple work. "How do you feel?" Hisa asked as they walked back toward the village, both of them dusty and tired. "Tired," Iko said. "My back aches from bending. My hands are dirty, but I feel settled, like I have been where I actually am for the first time in months." "This is ordinary mind," Hisa said. "Nothing special. Just being here, responding to what needs doing, finding peace in the simplicity of honest work. Your meditation techniques may give you interesting experiences, but they cannot give you more than this. This is already everything." They walked in silence for a while. Then Iko asked, "Will you let me help you again tomorrow?" Hisa smiled. "The field is always there. The work is always there. Come whenever you wish." This story reveals another dimension of ordinary mind. Hisa was not anti-spiritual or dismissive of meditation practice, but she had found peace not through seeking extraordinary states, but through fully inhabiting her ordinary life. Her work in the field was not separate from spiritual practice. It was spiritual practice. Not because she made it significant, but because she gave herself to it completely. We often think that peace requires special conditions, like quiet meditation halls or retreat centers, time away from ordinary responsibilities. We believe that our daily work, our regular routines, our common activities are obstacles to peace rather than opportunities for it. So we wait for the right conditions. We tell ourselves we will be peaceful when we finally have time for proper practice. But ordinary mind teaches us differently. This moment, exactly as it is where peace lives. Not in special states or extraordinary experiences, but in the simple fact of being here, responding naturally to what life asks of us right now. When we stop seeking something beyond our ordinary experience, we discover that our ordinary experience, met fully, is already complete. We do not need to transcend it or transform it or achieve states beyond it. We only need to stop fighting it and be where we actually are. Take a gentle breath now. Let your body settle where it is. Feel the simple fact of breathing, which needs no technique or special method. Just breath moving through you, natural and easy. There is a teaching in Zen that can sound frustrating when you first hear it. A student asks, "What is enlightenment?" The master replies, "Your everyday mind." The student says, "But what should I do to attain it?" The master says, "If you try to attain it, you move away from it." This teaching points to something that seems impossible. How can the mind we already have be what we are seeking? Is less than #0. 5# is greater than. How can we already possess what we spend years trying to find? It feels like being told that the treasure we have been searching for is in our own pocket, and we have been carrying it the whole time. But this is exactly what ordinary mind reveals. The awareness that is reading these words right now, the consciousness that hears sounds and feels sensations, the mind that knows you are here in this moment, this is already it. Not a special version of your mind. Not your mind after years of meditation practice. Not your mind in some future enlightened state. This mind, right now, exactly as it is. We reject this teaching because it seems too simple. We think enlightenment must be something extraordinary, something we do not currently possess. So we search everywhere except the one place it actually exists, which is right here in ordinary awareness itself. We are like someone wearing glasses who frantically searches for their glasses, not realizing they are already looking through them. The old Zen teachers had endless patience with this confusion. They would point again and again to the same truth in different ways, trying to help students recognize what they already had. Your everyday mind is the Buddha mind. The awareness you use to wash your face in the morning is the same awareness the ancient masters cultivated. You are not missing anything. You are only overlooking what is already present. Let us explore a story that shows this truth. There once lived a young monk named Ren who had been practicing at a monastery for 7 years. He meditated every day. He studied the teachings. He followed all the precepts carefully. He was sincere in his practice and worked diligently to purify his mind. Yet despite all his efforts, he felt no closer to enlightenment than when he had begun. Ren would watch the senior monks and wonder what they possessed that he did not. They seemed peaceful and settled in a way he was not. They moved through their days with a quality of ease he could not find. He assumed they had achieved something through their practice, some special state or realization that he had not yet attained. One day, the monastery received a visit from an old teacher named Sozen, who had once trained there, but now lived alone in the mountains. Sozen had a reputation for unusual teaching methods and direct insight. Ren decided this was his chance. He would ask this visiting teacher the question that had been troubling him for years. He found Sozen sitting under a tree in the monastery garden, watching leaves move in the breeze. Ren approached and bowed respectfully. "Master Sozen, may I ask you a question?" Of course. Ren sat down across from the old teacher. I have been practicing here for 7 years. I meditate faithfully. I study the sutras. I try to cultivate wisdom and compassion. But I do not feel enlightened. I do not feel like I have found what I came here seeking. What am I missing? What else must I do? Sozin looked at him with kind eyes. What brought you to ask me this question just now? Ren was confused by the response. I saw you sitting here and thought it was a good opportunity to receive guidance from an experienced teacher. Before you saw me sitting here, what were you doing? I was sweeping the path near the meditation hall. How did you know the path needed sweeping? I saw leaves had fallen on it during the night. So you saw the leaves, you recognized that the path needed sweeping. You decided to sweep it, and you swept it? Yes, that is what happened. Who did all of that? Ren felt puzzled. I did. This I that saw the leaves, that knew what needed doing, that decided to act and then acted. Where is this I? Can you show it to me? Ren opened his mouth to answer, but found he could not point to anything specific. His body had done the sweeping, but was his body the I? His mind had made the decision. But where was this mind? It was not a physical thing he could show. I do not understand what you are asking, Ren admitted. Sozin smiled. Right now, you are hearing my voice. You are feeling the breeze. You are aware of thoughts moving through your mind. This awareness that knows all of these things, this is your everyday mind. It has been with you from the moment you woke this morning. It was there when you saw the leaves on the path. It was there when you decided to sweep. It is here now as we talk. This awareness is not something you need to find or achieve. It is already present, already functioning, already complete. But this is just my normal consciousness, Ren protested. This is not enlightenment. Enlightenment must be something special, something beyond ordinary experience. Why must it be beyond ordinary experience? Sozin asked gently. Who told you that what you already have is not enough? The Buddha taught that all beings possess Buddha nature, not that they will possess it after years of practice, not that they might possess it if they do the right techniques. They already possess it. Your everyday mind, the awareness you use right now to understand my words, this is Buddha nature expressing itself. Ren felt frustrated. But if I already have it, why do I not feel enlightened? Why do I still suffer? Why am I still confused? Because you are looking for something other than what you have. You are rejecting your everyday mind as insufficient and searching for some special mind you imagine enlightened people possess. This searching itself prevents you from recognizing what is already here. Sozin picked up a small stone from the ground. If I told you this stone is a precious jewel, would that make it more valuable than it is? No, it is just a stone. And if I told you that this stone is worthless, would that change its nature? No, it would still be the same stone. Your everyday mind is the same. It is what it is, regardless of what you think about it. When you call it just ordinary consciousness and reject it as insufficient, you do not change it. You only create suffering by wanting it to be something other than what it is. When you accept it as it is and stop searching for something else, the suffering ends. This acceptance, this stopping of the search, this is what we call enlightenment. Ren sat quietly, trying to absorb this teaching. He had spent 7 years believing that enlightenment was a special state he needed to achieve through practice. Now this teacher was telling him that his everyday awareness, the mind he used to sweep paths and eat meals and ask questions, was already complete. How can I practice then? Ren asked. If I already have what I am seeking, what is the point of meditation or study? Practice is not about getting somewhere you are not. It is about fully being where you are. You meditate not to create a special state, but to recognize the awareness that is already present. You study not to gain something you lack, but to clear away the confusion that prevents you from seeing what you already have. Every moment of practice is an opportunity to come home to your everyday mind instead of running away from it, seeking something better. Sozin stood slowly. I must go prepare for the evening meal. But Ren, pay attention today. Notice this awareness that knows you are alive, that experiences whatever arises. Do not judge it or try to change it. Just notice it. This noticing is the practice. And what you notice is already enlightened, whether you believe it or not. After Sozin left, Ren remained sitting under the tree. He felt confused but also curious. Could it really be this simple? Could the awareness he had right now actually be what he had been seeking? He decided to follow Sozin's instruction. For the rest of the day, he simply noticed his awareness. When he walked to the meditation hall, he noticed the awareness that knew he was walking. The feeling of his feet on the stone path. The movement of his robes. The sound of gravel shifting. All of this was known by something, witnessed by something. What was this something that knew? When he sat in meditation, he noticed the awareness that knew he was sitting. Thoughts arose about whether he was doing this correctly. The awareness noticed the thoughts. Worries came about his lack of progress. The awareness witnessed the worries. Judgments appeared about this whole exercise seeming pointless. The awareness observed the judgments. Each time, the awareness itself remained unchanged, simply witnessing whatever passed through it. When he ate dinner, he noticed the awareness that tasted the food and knew he was eating. The bowl felt cool in his hands. The rice had a subtle sweetness. His body knew when it had eaten enough. All of this information came to him through awareness. Not through thinking about awareness, but through awareness itself, which was simply present, simply functioning, simply being. At first, this seemed pointless. He was just doing what he always did, just noticing that he was doing it. But as the day continued, something began to shift. He realized that this awareness he was noticing had a quality of being already at peace. It was not disturbed by his thoughts or feelings. It simply observed them arising and passing. It did not need anything to be different. It was complete in itself. When a worry arose about whether he was practicing correctly, the awareness simply noticed the worry without being troubled by it. The worry was there, moving through awareness like a cloud moving through sky. But the awareness itself was like the sky, untroubled by what passed through it. When a judgment came about his progress, the awareness observed the judgment without believing it. When excitement arose at the thought that maybe he was understanding something, the awareness witnessed the excitement without clinging to it. He realized something remarkable. The thoughts and emotions that he had been trying so hard to control or eliminate through practice were not actually the problem. They arose and passed naturally. The problem was that he had been identifying with them, believing he was his thoughts and emotions rather than the awareness that witnessed them. When he rested in the awareness itself rather than being caught in what awareness witnessed, peace was already there. That evening, Ren sought out Sozin again. He found the old teacher washing his bowl after dinner, the simple ceramic bowl that monks used for meals. Sozin was rinsing it carefully, giving the task his full attention. "Master Sozin, I followed your instruction today. I noticed my awareness throughout the day." Sozin continued washing his bowl. "And what did you discover?" "I discovered that awareness itself is peaceful, even when my thoughts are not peaceful. It is complete, even when I feel incomplete. It is already what I have been trying to achieve through practice." Sozin smiled as he dried his bowl with a cloth. "So now you know what the old masters meant when they said, 'Your everyday mind is the path.' Not your mind after you fix it or improve it or make it special. Your mind as it already is, the ordinary awareness that has been with you all along. But why did it take 7 years to see this? Why did I not recognize it from the beginning?" Sozin set down his bowl and turned to face Ren. "Because you were taught to seek something extraordinary. You were told that enlightenment was a great achievement, a special attainment, something you did not currently possess. So you overlooked what was right in front of you, too ordinary to be what you imagined enlightenment should be. The teaching is simple, but accepting it is difficult because it asks us to give up our ideas about what should be and accept what actually is. What should I do now? Should I stop meditating? Stop studying? Why would you stop? But understand what you are doing. You do not meditate to create this awareness. It is already here. You meditate to recognize it, to rest in it, to stop running away from it, seeking something better. You study not to gain what you lack, but to clear away confusion about what you already have. Every practice is an opportunity to come home to your everyday mind." Ren bowed deeply. "Thank you for showing me what I already had." Sozin laughed, a warm sound in the evening air. "I showed you nothing. It was already there. I simply pointed at it until you stopped looking past it for something more impressive." This story reveals the heart of ordinary mind teaching. Ren had everything he needed from the beginning. His everyday awareness, the consciousness he used to sweep paths and eat meals, was already complete and already enlightened. But he had been taught to reject it as insufficient and seek something extraordinary. Buddhism teaches that our true nature is already enlightened. We are not trying to become Buddha. We are trying to recognize the Buddha nature that has always been present. This is a radical teaching because it means that all our striving and seeking, while it may have value, is not actually bringing us closer to something we do not possess. It is helping us recognize what we have been carrying all along. The old Zen masters would sometimes shout or hit students who asked about enlightenment, not out of anger, but to shock them into recognizing the awareness that was already present in that very moment. The awareness that knows the shout, that feels the surprise, that is reading these words right now. This is it. Not a special version of awareness achieved after years of practice, but the ordinary awareness you have been using your whole life. We resist this teaching because it seems to diminish enlightenment, to make it too common and accessible. We want enlightenment to be impressive, to be the reward for years of difficult practice. But this wanting itself is what keeps us from recognizing what is already here. The search for something special prevents us from valuing what we actually have. Let us explore another story that reveals this teaching from a different angle. There was once a woman named Aki who had spent many years traveling from teacher to teacher, seeking the deepest wisdom. She had studied with meditation masters in distant monasteries, sitting for hours until her legs went numb. She had learned from forest hermits who lived in caves, practicing their austere methods of self-denial. She had attended teachings from renowned scholars who could explain the most subtle points of Dharma, their lectures lasting for days. Yet despite all this seeking, despite all the knowledge she had accumulated, she felt she had not found what she was looking for. Each teacher had something valuable to offer. Each practice had its merits. But always, after a few months or a year, Aki would feel restless again. The sense that the real teaching was somewhere else, with someone else, would arise in her. She would pack her few belongings and set off again, certain that the next teacher, the next monastery, the next technique would finally give her what she sought. Aki heard of a teacher who lived in her own village, an old woman named Yuma who ran a simple tea shop. People said that Yuma had great wisdom, though she never gave formal teachings or took on students. She simply made tea and listened to her neighbors. Aki had walked past Yuma's shop hundreds of times over the years, never imagining that wisdom might live in such an ordinary place. But now, having exhausted other options, having traveled to the most remote monasteries and the most famous teachers, she decided to visit. She entered the small shop one afternoon. The interior was simple and clean. A few tables, a counter where Yuma prepared tea, shelves holding various tea containers. Nothing impressive or spiritual, just a neighborhood tea shop. Yuma was behind the counter, an old woman with gray hair tied back simply. She wore plain clothes, not monk's robes. She smiled when Aki entered. "Welcome. Please sit. What would you like?" Aki sat at a small table by the window. "Just tea, please." Yuma prepared the tea with simple, practiced movements. No ceremony, no elaborate ritual, just making tea the way someone does who has made tea thousands of times. She brought it to the table in a plain cup and sat down across from Aki, her own cup in hand. "You look troubled," she said. Aki was surprised by the direct observation. "I have been searching for many years. I have traveled to distant places seeking teachers and teachings, but I have not found what I am looking for. I heard that you might have wisdom to share. What are you looking for?" Yuma asked, sipping her tea. "Peace. Understanding. Some sense of arriving at the truth instead of always searching for it. I feel like I have been seeking my entire adult life, and I am tired. But I do not know how to stop seeking because I have not yet found what I am seeking." Yuma nodded, her expression sympathetic. "Where have you been searching?" Aki described her travels. The monasteries in the mountains, where monks rose at midnight for meditation. The hermits in their caves, who owned nothing but a robe and a bowl. The scholars in their temples, who had memorized entire libraries of texts. She had learned many teachings, practiced many techniques, studied many texts. She could explain complex philosophical points. She could sit in meditation for hours. She knew the names of ancient masters and their lineages. But none of it had given her the sense of completion she sought. "Did any of these teachers help you?" Yuma asked. They each taught me valuable things. I am grateful for what they shared. But I always felt like the real teaching was somewhere else, somewhere I had not yet found. Like there was a secret that everyone else knew but no one would tell me directly. And now you have returned to your own village, to a tea shop you have passed countless times, hoping to find here what you could not find elsewhere? Yes, Aki admitted, feeling slightly foolish. It sounds strange when you say it that way. Yuma smiled gently. Tell me, Aki, when you traveled to these distant places, what did you take with you? Only simple things. A bag with spare clothes. A few coins. A sleeping mat. I tried to travel lightly so I could move easily from place to place. And what else? Aki thought about it. My memories. My thoughts. My worries. Those went with me too, unfortunately. I could not leave those behind. And what about your awareness? The consciousness that experienced all those travels, that heard all those teachings, that sat in all those meditation halls, that knows right now that you are sitting in this tea shop. That went with me too, I suppose. I never thought about it. And when you returned home, what did you bring back? I brought back knowledge, new understandings, different perspectives on the teachings. I can explain things now that I could not explain before. And what about your awareness? Is it any different than when you left? Aki paused. She had never thought about it this way. Her awareness, the simple fact of being conscious, of knowing she was alive, of experiencing each moment. Had that changed? I suppose it is the same awareness. It has always been with me. Exactly. Yuma poured more tea into Aki's cup from a small pot she had brought. You have traveled across the country carrying what you were searching for. This awareness, this ordinary consciousness that knows you are alive, that experiences each moment, this is your home. It has been your home all along. But you kept leaving it, thinking home must be somewhere else. But this is just my normal awareness, Aki protested. This is not wisdom or peace. This is just me being me. This cannot be what all those teachers were pointing toward. And what is wrong with you being you? Yuma asked. Who else should you be? This ordinary consciousness that you dismiss as just me is the same consciousness that the Buddha used, that all the great masters used. They did not have special awareness that you lack. They simply recognized what they already had and stopped searching for something better. Aki felt tears rising unexpectedly. She had spent years traveling, seeking something she thought she lacked. She had imagined that enlightenment was somewhere far away, possessed by special people in special places who had achieved something extraordinary. She had never considered that it might be right here in her ordinary experience of being alive, in the simple awareness that had accompanied her through every moment of her life. I feel like I have wasted so many years, she said quietly, her voice breaking slightly. Have you? Yuma asked gently. You learned many things. You met many teachers. You saw many places. These experiences enriched your life. You know things now that you did not know before. But now you can stop seeking and recognize what you have been carrying all along. This is not a waste. This is completing the journey by arriving where you began and knowing it for the first time. Aki looked at the old woman across from her. Why do you run a tea shop instead of teaching formally? Surely you could help many people. I am helping people, Yuma said. I make good tea. I create a peaceful place where neighbors can rest and talk. I listen when someone needs listening. This ordinary work is my practice and my teaching. I do not need to be a famous teacher in a monastery. I only need to be fully present for what life asks of me each day. But is this enough? Just making tea and listening to people? What would be more than this? I have my awareness. I have this moment. I have the opportunity to serve others in simple ways. My everyday mind finds peace in ordinary work. Why would I need something more impressive? Aki sat quietly, sipping her tea. She realized that in this small shop, with this ordinary old woman making tea, she felt more at peace than she had felt in any of the impressive monasteries or dramatic hermit caves. Nothing special was happening, just two people drinking tea. Just ordinary awareness being aware. Just this moment, complete in itself. Can I come back tomorrow? Aki asked. The shop is here every day, Yuma replied. And so are you. Not the you that travels seeking enlightenment, but the you that already has what it needs. Come drink tea whenever you wish. Sometimes the best teaching is just sitting together, being ourselves, without trying to be anything special. Aki did return, day after day. She helped Yuma in the shop sometimes. They would talk about small things, ordinary things. The weather, the neighbors, the tea harvest. Nothing profound, nothing special. But Aki found that her restless seeking had quieted. She had finally come home, not to a place, but to the recognition that her everyday awareness, her ordinary mind, had been home all along. This story shows us another facet of ordinary mind. Aki had traveled everywhere, looking for something she already possessed. Her everyday awareness accompanied her on every journey, experienced every teaching, but she dismissed it as insufficient because it seemed too ordinary to be what she was seeking. Zen teaching reminds us that we are not lacking anything essential. The awareness we have right now is the same awareness the Buddha had. The difference is not in the awareness itself, but in how we relate to it. When we reject it as insufficient and seek something better, we create suffering. When we recognize it as complete and rest in it, peace is already present. The old masters called this returning home. Not traveling to some distant place, but recognizing where you already are. Not becoming someone special, but fully being who you have always been. Not achieving enlightenment, but recognizing the enlightened nature of ordinary awareness itself. This teaching can sound disappointing at first. We want enlightenment to be something impressive, something that makes us special or different. But the teaching points to something more valuable than specialness. It points to the peace that comes from accepting yourself completely, from recognizing that you are already enough, that what you have been seeking has been with you all along. Your everyday mind, the awareness reading these words, the consciousness that knows you are here right now. This is it. Not just ordinary awareness, but the extraordinary fact of awareness itself, always present, always complete, always already home. Take a gentle breath now. Notice the awareness that knows you are breathing. This awareness does not come and go. It is always here, whether you notice it or not. Let yourself rest in this simple recognition. There is an old saying in Zen that sounds like a riddle. Before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. When people first hear this, they often feel confused or even disappointed. If nothing changes, what is the point of practice? Is less than #0. 5 is greater than. If we still do the same ordinary tasks, what is the value of awakening? But this teaching points to something essential about ordinary mind. Enlightenment does not transport us to a different realm where we no longer need to do daily tasks. It does not make us special beings who float above ordinary life. The wood still needs chopping. The water still needs carrying. What changes is not the tasks themselves, but how we meet them. Before awakening, we chop wood while wishing we were doing something else. We carry water while thinking about more important things. Our minds resist the simplicity of what is actually required. We make our daily tasks into burdens, obstacles to overcome before we can get to what we consider our real life. After awakening, we simply chop wood. We simply carry water. The tasks remain the same, but the mental struggle around them dissolves. We are no longer split between what we are doing and where we think we should be. The separation between spiritual practice and ordinary activity disappears. Everything becomes practice. Everything becomes sacred. Not because we make it special, but because we stop making distinctions between special and ordinary. This teaching challenges our ideas about spiritual life. We imagine that enlightened people must live differently than ordinary people. They must spend their time in meditation or prayer, removed from mundane concerns. But the old masters taught that true practice happens right in the middle of ordinary life, in the daily tasks we all must do. There was once a young monk named Jiro, who joined a monastery with a burning desire for enlightenment. He had read accounts of monks who had profound awakening experiences, who touched ultimate truth and were transformed forever. He wanted this for himself. He imagined that once he achieved enlightenment, his life would be different. He would be peaceful and wise. He would understand the deepest mysteries. He would be free from ordinary concerns. The monastery had a daily routine that all monks followed. Wake before dawn. Sit in meditation. Chant sutras. Eat breakfast. Clean the buildings. Work in the gardens. Study texts. More meditation. More chanting. Prepare meals. Eat dinner. Evening meditation. Sleep. The same schedule every day, year after year. Jiro threw himself into the meditation practice. He would sit for hours, pushing through pain and discomfort, certain that if he just sat long enough with enough intensity, enlightenment would come. During work periods, when he was supposed to be sweeping the courtyard or washing dishes, he would do the tasks as quickly as possible so he could return to what he considered real practice, which was sitting meditation. The other monks would work with steady attention, seeming to give their full energy to whatever task was at hand. Jiro found this puzzling. Why were they wasting time on mundane chores when they could be meditating? Did they not understand that enlightenment was the goal? That these daily tasks were just necessary maintenance, not the actual practice? An old monk named Kosho often worked alongside Jiro. Kosho had been at the monastery for 40 years. He moved slowly now, his body bent with age, but he brought careful attention to everything he did. When sweeping, he swept with complete focus. When washing dishes, he gave himself fully to washing dishes. One day, Jiro was rushing through, sweeping the meditation hall, his mind already on the next sitting period. Kosho was working nearby, slowly polishing the wooden floor with a cloth. "Why are you in such a hurry?" Kosho asked. "I want to finish so I can return to meditation," Jiro replied. "That is where real practice happens." Kosho sat back on his heels and looked at the young monk. "And what are you doing right now?" "Sweeping. Just maintenance work." "Just maintenance work," Kosho repeated slowly. "Tell me, Jiro, what do you hope to achieve through your meditation?" "Enlightenment. Liberation. I want to understand true nature and be free from suffering." "And what is preventing you from understanding true nature right now while you are sweeping?" Jiro was puzzled by the question. "I am not meditating. I am just doing chores." "I see. So true nature is only available during meditation? The rest of the time it goes somewhere else?" "Well, no, but surely meditation is more important than sweeping floors." Kosho smiled and returned to his polishing. "For 40 years I have lived here. I have swept these floors thousands of times. I have washed these dishes tens of thousands of times. I have pulled weeds from this garden in every season. And I have learned that if I cannot find peace while sweeping, I will not find it while sitting. If I cannot be present while washing dishes, I will not be present in the meditation hall. The tasks do not matter. What matters is whether I am here, fully here, for what I am actually doing." He paused and looked at Jiro with kind eyes. "You are trying to rush through your life to get to the good parts. But there are no good parts and bad parts. There is only this moment, and whatever this moment asks of you. When it asks you to sit, you sit. When it asks you to sweep, you sweep. Both are the same practice. Both are opportunities to be completely present instead of somewhere else in your mind." Jiro wanted to argue, but something in Kosho's words stopped him. He had been treating half his life as an obstacle to the other half. Sweeping was just something to get through so he could meditate. Eating was just fuel so he could sit longer. Sleep was an annoying necessity. He had divided his life into important spiritual practice and unimportant daily tasks. But some monks have great awakening experiences during intensive meditation, Jiro said. Sudden enlightenment that transforms everything. That never happens while sweeping floors. True awakening transforms how you sweep floors, Kosho replied. The monk who has deep insight returns to sweeping floors. If the insight does not help him sweep floors with more presence and care, what good is it? Buddhism teaches that wisdom must express itself in ordinary action. Enlightenment that only exists in the meditation hall is not yet complete enlightenment. Over the following weeks, Jiro tried to bring the same attention to work that he brought to meditation. At first, it felt forced. He would try to be mindful while sweeping, but his mind would wander to thoughts about his practice, his progress, his spiritual goals. The work still felt like an interruption. He would catch himself rushing again, trying to finish quickly. Or he would become frustrated with himself for not being perfectly present. He turned presence into another goal to achieve, another way to judge himself as succeeding or failing. The work became burdened with his ideas about how he should be doing it. But gradually, something shifted. One afternoon, he was sweeping the path outside the meditation hall. The sun was warm. A breeze moved through the trees, carrying the scent of pine. His broom moved back and forth across the stones. Without planning to, without trying to, he found himself simply sweeping. Not sweeping while thinking about sweeping. Not sweeping while evaluating his mindfulness. Just sweeping. The sensation of the broom handle in his hands. The sound of the bristles against stone. The pile of dust and leaves growing larger. All of it was present, and he was present with it. His mind was not somewhere else, and there was something peaceful in this simplicity. Something he had been missing while rushing through tasks to get to what he thought was more important. He began to notice that when he gave himself fully to sweeping, when he let go of the internal commentary about how he should be doing something else, the sweeping itself became peaceful. The repetitive motion of the broom had its own rhythm. The satisfaction of seeing the floor become clean was genuine. The simple fact of doing what needed doing without argument created a kind of ease. One morning, Jiro was washing dishes after breakfast. His hands were in warm, soapy water. The texture of soap, the weight of each bowl, the temperature of the water. He was cleaning each bowl carefully, feeling its shape, removing every grain of rice that clung to the sides. His mind was not somewhere else. He was not thinking about the next meditation period, or reviewing the morning sitting, or planning his questions for the teacher. He was just washing dishes, fully present for this simple task. In that moment, something became clear. This was it. This simple presence, this complete attention to an ordinary task, this was what he had been seeking. Not a special state that arrived during intense meditation, but the natural peace that was always available when he stopped splitting himself between what he was doing and what he thought he should be doing. The dishes needed washing. He was washing them. There was no separation between himself and the activity. No judgment about whether this was important or unimportant. No mental commentary about whether he was being mindful enough. Just this moment, complete in itself. Jiro continued washing dishes, a smile spreading across his face. Before this moment, he had washed thousands of dishes while thinking about enlightenment. Now he was simply washing dishes. And in that simplicity, he found what he had been seeking all along. The enlightenment he imagined was always somewhere else, always in some future attainment. But this presence, this simplicity, was here now and had always been available. Later, he sought out Kosho in the garden. The old monk was pulling weeds, working slowly through a row of vegetables. "Kosho, I think I understand what you were trying to show me." Kosho looked up from his work. "Oh? What do you understand?" "That it is all practice. That enlightenment is not somewhere else, some special state I achieve in meditation. It is right here in ordinary activities when I bring my full attention to them." Kosho nodded. "That is good. Now you can begin real practice. Now you can stop trying to use half your life to escape the other half and start actually living all of it." But does this mean meditation is not important? That I should just focus on daily tasks? Not at all. Meditation helps train your attention. It gives you time to see how your mind works. But then you must bring that attention into your whole life. Before enlightenment, you meditate. After enlightenment, you still meditate. But you also sweep floors with the same presence you bring to meditation. You wash dishes with the same attention you give to breathing. The activities are not separate. They are all expressions of the same practice. Jiro bowed to his teacher. Thank you for your patience. I have been living here for 2 years, but I just arrived today. Kosho laughed. Welcome home. Now, would you help me with these weeds? They are not less important than meditation, and they are not more important. They are simply what needs doing right now. This story shows us how we create false separations between spiritual life and ordinary life. Jiro had decided that sitting meditation was important and daily tasks were not. This split prevented him from being fully present for any of it. His meditation was burdened by his striving to achieve something. His daily tasks were rushed through as obstacles to overcome. Buddhism teaches that this separation is the problem, not the solution. The old masters lived in the midst of ordinary life while maintaining deep presence and awareness. They did not escape to meditation halls and avoid daily responsibilities. They brought meditation into cooking, cleaning, working, relating to others. Every activity became an opportunity to practice presence. Before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. We do these tasks while our minds are somewhere else, complaining or planning or wishing we were doing something better. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. We do the same tasks with full presence, without the mental struggle, without the separation between spiritual and ordinary. This does not mean we never sit in meditation or study teachings. These practices are valuable. But they are valuable because they help us live more fully, not because they allow us to escape from living. The point of meditation is not to have special experiences that exist only on the cushion. The point is to wake up to the ordinary miracle of being alive and bring that awareness into everything we do. Let us explore another story. There was once a government official named Kenta who had responsibilities for his entire province. He oversaw road construction, settled disputes between villages, managed tax collection, and reported to the emperor about local conditions. His days were filled with meetings, documents, decisions, and concerns about the welfare of thousands of people. Kenta had always been interested in Buddhist teachings, but his official duties left little time for practice. He would think longingly of monks in their monasteries, able to dedicate themselves fully to meditation and study. He imagined that if he could just leave his position and become a monk, he could finally develop real wisdom and peace. One year, a respected Zen teacher named Dayu was traveling through the province. Kenta arranged to meet with him, hoping to receive guidance about how to practice while burdened with worldly responsibilities. They met in Kenta's office, a room filled with maps and administrative documents. Kenta bowed respectfully and said, "Master Dayu, I am grateful you agreed to see me. I have a question that troubles me deeply. I want to practice Zen seriously, but my work consumes all my time. I have considered resigning my position to enter a monastery. What do you advise?" Dayu looked around the office, taking in the maps, showing villages and roads, the stacks of documents, the evidence of Kenta's responsibilities. "What would you do in a monastery?" he asked. "I would meditate, study the teachings, work to understand true nature, and develop compassion and wisdom." "And why do you need a monastery for this?" Kenta was surprised by the question. "Because in a monastery, I would be free from worldly concerns. I could focus entirely on spiritual development instead of being distracted by administrative duties." "I see. So you believe your work is separate from spiritual practice? That managing the affairs of this province is an obstacle to wisdom rather than an expression of it? Well, yes. Surely meditation and study are more important than overseeing road construction or settling land disputes. Dayu smiled. Tell me, Kenta, when you settle a dispute fairly, are you not practicing compassion? When you ensure roads are built well so people can travel safely, are you not serving others? When you manage taxes carefully so the burden is distributed justly, are you not expressing wisdom? What could be more important than this? Kenta felt uncertain. But these are just my duties. They are not spiritual practice. They are worldly responsibilities. Who made this distinction between worldly and spiritual? In Zen, we do not separate the two. When you govern well, you practice Buddhism. When you serve the people of your province with wisdom and care, you express enlightenment. Running away to a monastery would not make you more spiritual. It would just mean you were meditating instead of governing. The activity matters less than how you bring yourself to it. Dayu looked at one of the maps on the wall, showing the villages under Kenta's care. Do you govern with full attention? Do you listen carefully to people's concerns? Do you make decisions without being swayed by personal gain? Do you remain calm under pressure? These are the same qualities monks cultivate in meditation. You are just cultivating them while serving thousands of people instead of sitting on a cushion. But I do not feel peaceful or wise, Kenta admitted. I feel constantly stressed by my responsibilities. My mind is always busy with concerns about everything that might go wrong. That is because you are treating your work as a burden instead of as practice. You think it prevents you from being spiritual, rather than seeing it as your opportunity to be spiritual. Zen teaching shows us that any activity can be practice if we bring the right quality of attention to it. A monk washing dishes in a monastery and an official governing a province are doing the same practice if they both bring full presence and care to what they are doing. Dayu paused. When a dispute comes before you, do you listen with your whole attention? Or are you already thinking about the next problem? Kenta thought about this. I am often distracted. While one person is talking, I am thinking about the arguments I have heard from the other side, or about my response, or about the other tasks waiting for me. There is your practice. Listen with your whole attention. When someone speaks to you, be fully present for their words. When you make a decision, give that decision your complete consideration. When you write a report, write it with full care. This is meditation in action. This is enlightenment expressing itself through governance. But what about sitting meditation? Should I not make time for formal practice? If you can, yes. Early morning or late evening, even 20 minutes of sitting can help settle your mind and refresh your awareness. But do not wait for those 20 minutes to practice. Practice every moment. Your whole day is your meditation hall. Every person you meet is your teacher. Every decision you make is an opportunity to express wisdom and compassion. Kenta felt something shift in his understanding. He had been thinking his work prevented him from spiritual practice, but Dayu was showing him that his work was his spiritual practice. But how do I handle the stress? How do I stay calm when there are so many demands and concerns? The stress comes from believing you should not be stressed, from fighting against the reality of your responsibilities. When you accept that this is your life, that these responsibilities are what you have chosen to undertake, and you bring your full attention to meeting them rather than wishing you were somewhere else, much of the stress dissolves. Not all of it, perhaps, but you stop adding mental struggle on top of legitimate challenge. Day you stood to leave. Before you understood this, you governed while thinking about becoming a monk. Now, you can simply govern. The task remains the same, but you bring your whole self to it, instead of dividing yourself between where you are and where you think you should be. This is the teaching. Before enlightenment, govern a province. After enlightenment, govern a province. But the quality of the governing changes because you change. After Dayu left, Kenta sat quietly in his office. He looked at the work waiting for him, the reports to read, the decisions to make, the meetings to attend. It was all still there. Nothing external had changed. But he saw it differently now. This was not an obstacle to spiritual life. This was spiritual life itself. His opportunity to practice was not waiting for him in some future monastery. It was right here in the middle of his busy, responsible, ordinary life. He looked at the first document on his desk. A dispute between two villages over water rights. Before, he might have read it quickly, made a decision, moved on to the next problem. Now he read it slowly, giving each detail his attention. What did each side truly need? What solution would serve both communities? He found that when he gave the matter his full consideration without rushing, a wiser response emerged. From that day forward, Kenta practiced governance as Zen. When people came to him with concerns, he listened with full attention. He would notice when his mind started to wander or jump ahead to formulate responses. Each time, he would gently bring his attention back to the person speaking, really hearing what they were saying, not just waiting for them to finish so he could reply. When making decisions, he gave each one his complete consideration, instead of rushing through to get to the next item. He noticed that many of his mistakes in the past had come from divided attention, from trying to handle too many things at once. Now he worked with one matter at a time, fully present for each one. When writing reports, he wrote with care, thinking about how his words would be received, whether they truly conveyed what needed conveying. When walking between meetings, he felt his feet on the ground rather than letting his mind race ahead to what was coming next. Even in these brief transitions, he could practice presence. His work did not become easier. The responsibilities remained demanding. There were still difficult decisions to make, still conflicts that had no perfect solution, still long days that left him tired. But the mental struggle around them eased. He was no longer split between what he was doing and what he thought he should be doing. He was simply here, meeting what each moment asked of him. The difference was subtle, but profound. Before, he had carried his work as a burden. Now it was his real life. Each task became an opportunity rather than an obstacle. And in that shift, he found the peace he had thought required escaping to a monastery. People began to notice a change in Kenta's governance. His decisions seemed wiser. His responses to crises were calmer. He listened more carefully. When someone thanked him for his fairness in settling a difficult matter, Kenta realized that serving well was its own reward. He did not need to become a monk to live a spiritual life. He was living one right now, right here, in the midst of worldly responsibilities. We create separation between spiritual life and ordinary life, between important activities and mundane ones. We think we need special conditions for peace and wisdom. But the old teachers kept showing that peace and wisdom are available right in the middle of ordinary activity, when we bring full presence to whatever we are actually doing. This does not mean we never need formal practice. Meditation, study, time for reflection, these all have value. But their value is in helping us live more fully, not in providing escape from living. The monk returns from the meditation hall to sweep floors. The official brings the quality of attention cultivated in morning meditation into afternoon meetings. Practice and life are not separate. They are two names for the same thing. Before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. This is not a disappointing teaching. It is a liberating one. We do not need to wait for special circumstances to practice. We do not need to escape our responsibilities to find peace. We can begin right now, right here, with whatever task is in front of us. This moment, this activity, this ordinary life is already the perfect place for practice. Take a gentle breath now. Whatever you are doing in this moment, whatever circumstances you find yourself in, this is not preventing your peace. This is where peace lives, right in the middle of your actual life. When we think about spiritual practice, we often imagine special activities like meditation in quiet halls, chanting sacred texts, or ceremonies and rituals that set certain moments apart from ordinary life. We create categories in our minds where this activity is spiritual and that activity is mundane. This place is holy and that place is ordinary. This time is for practice and that time is for getting through daily necessities. Buddhism teaches that these divisions are created by our thinking, not by reality itself. Zen masters throughout history have pointed to a different understanding. The sacred is not separate from the mundane. The holy is not apart from the ordinary. Every moment is sacred when we bring our full presence to it. Every activity becomes holy when we meet it with complete attention. The Buddha did not teach his disciples to spend all their time in meditation. He taught them to bring awareness into every aspect of life, to eat mindfully, walk mindfully, speak mindfully, and work mindfully. The practice was not confined to special activities but woven into the fabric of daily living. This teaching challenges how we organize our lives. We set aside time for what we consider important and rush through what we consider unimportant. We honor certain activities as valuable and dismiss others as necessary drudgery. But the old teachers kept showing that this ranking creates unnecessary suffering. When we decide that half our life is beneath us, we make ourselves miserable during that half. The sacred is not something we add to life through special practices. It is what reveals itself when we stop rushing past our actual experience. When we slow down enough to truly see what we are doing, even the simplest task can become a gateway to peace and presence. A story about this comes from a young monk named Sato who joined a monastery full of enthusiasm for spiritual practice. He had read many books about Buddhism and meditation. He imagined that monastery life would be filled with profound teachings, deep meditation sessions, and discussions of ultimate truth with wise masters. When Sato arrived, the head monk assigned him to work in the kitchen for his first year. His main responsibility was cleaning, washing dishes after meals, scrubbing pots, sweeping the kitchen floor, wiping down counters, taking out waste. the same tasks every day, morning and evening, after each meal. Sato was disappointed and confused. He had come to the monastery to practice Buddhism, not to wash dishes. This felt like menial labor, something that kept him from real practice. He would rush through the cleaning as quickly as possible, then go sit in the meditation hall. That was where he thought real spiritual work happened. The kitchen master was an old monk named Eiji, who had been at the monastery for 50 years. Eiji moved slowly through his work, giving careful attention to every task. When he washed a pot, he cleaned it thoroughly. When he swept every corner. When he prepared vegetables, he handled each one with care. He seemed content with his work, even peaceful, which Sato found puzzling. One evening after dinner, Sato was rushing through the dishes, clattering bowls as he stacked them, splashing water carelessly. Eiji came over and stood quietly nearby, watching. "Why are you in such a hurry?" Eiji asked gently. "I want to finish so I can go meditate," Sato replied. "I did not come here to spend my time washing dishes." Eiji picked up one of the bowls Sato had washed. He examined it carefully, then held it out. There were still grains of rice stuck to the side. "When you wash dishes," Eiji said, "do you wash them? Or do you think about meditating while your hands move through the motions?" Sato felt embarrassed. "I am sorry. I will wash it again. I am not criticizing you. I am asking you a question. Where is your mind when you wash dishes?" "My mind is on my practice, on meditation, on studying the teachings." "And where are your hands?" "Here, washing dishes." "So your mind is in one place and your body is in another place. How can you be at peace when you are split like this?" Eiji set down the bowl. Buddhism teaches that practice is not about dividing our time between important spiritual activities and unimportant daily tasks. Practice is bringing our whole attention to whatever we are actually doing. When you meditate, meditate. When you wash dishes, wash dishes. "But washing dishes is not spiritual practice," Sato protested. "It is just cleaning up after meals." Eiji smiled. "Who decided this? Who drew a line and said meditation is sacred but cleaning is ordinary? Zen teaching shows us that any activity done with full presence is practice. Any moment given complete attention is sacred. When you wash a bowl with your whole attention, you are practicing Buddhism. When you sit in meditation thinking about how much more important meditation is than washing bowls, you are not practicing." He picked up a bowl and began washing it himself. His movements were slow and careful. He felt the curve of the ceramic under his hand. He made sure every grain of rice was removed. He rinsed it thoroughly. He set it down gently to dry. The whole process took perhaps a minute, but there was something about the way he did it that commanded attention. He was completely present for washing one bowl. "This bowl," Eiji said, "holds food that nourishes the monks who practice here. Treating it with respect, cleaning it well, this is serving the community. This is supporting the practice of everyone in this monastery. How is this less important than sitting on a cushion?" The Buddha taught that right action in daily life is part of the path, not a distraction from it. Over the following weeks, Sato tried to practice what Eiji had shown him. It was harder than he expected. His mind would wander constantly. While washing one dish, he would be thinking about the next dish. While sweeping, he would be planning what to do after sweeping. His body was present, but his attention was always somewhere else. He would catch himself rushing again, moving quickly through the tasks so he could get to what he still considered real practice. The habit of dismissing his work as unimportant was deeply ingrained. His mind kept creating a story that the dishes were an obstacle and meditation was the goal. Even when he tried to be present, he was trying in a way that created more mental effort and struggle. But gradually, he began to notice something. When he could bring his full attention to the task at hand, even for a few moments, there was a quality of peace in it. The warm water on his hands while washing dishes, its temperature and texture. The rhythmic motion of the broom while sweeping, the way it moved across the floor. The satisfaction of seeing a clean counter, knowing someone else would benefit from his care. These simple things held their own completeness when he was actually present for them. He began to see that AG was right. The peace did not come from the activity itself, but from the quality of attention he brought to it. When his mind was elsewhere, even sitting in meditation felt agitated and uncomfortable. When he was fully present, even scrubbing a pot had a quality of calm. One morning, Sato was washing pots after breakfast. They were large, heavy pots that took effort to clean, with rice and vegetables stuck to the bottom from cooking. Usually he disliked this task, seeing it as the worst part of kitchen work. But on this morning, something was different. He was not thinking about disliking it. He was not planning what he would do afterward. He found himself simply doing it. Not thinking about meditation or studying or anything else. Just scrubbing this pot, feeling the resistance of the stuck food against the scrubber, applying more effort where needed, feeling the satisfaction when a stubborn bit finally came free, rinsing thoroughly in clean water, and watching the last traces of food wash away. His whole attention was absorbed in the task. There was just this pot, this water, these hands, this moment. When he finished and stepped back, he realized something remarkable. For those 15 minutes of washing pots, his mind had been completely quiet. No worries about his progress on the path. No judgments about whether he was practicing correctly. No thoughts about being somewhere else or doing something better. Just complete presence with what he was actually doing. This was the same quality of peace he sometimes touched in meditation. That sense of being fully here, fully alive, not wanting anything to be different. But it had come not from sitting on a cushion in the meditation hall, but from washing pots with full attention in the kitchen. The activity did not matter. The presence mattered. That evening, Sato found Eiji in the kitchen preparing vegetables for the next day. "Eiji, I think I am beginning to understand what you were trying to show me." The old monk looked up from his cutting board. "What do you understand?" "That the dishes are not less important than meditation. That cleaning the kitchen is not separate from spiritual practice. That any activity done with full presence is sacred." Eiji nodded and continued cutting. "That is good. Now you can begin to actually live here, instead of waiting for your real life to start. For a year, you have been in this kitchen, but not really here. You have been somewhere else in your mind, thinking about more important things. Now maybe you can discover what is right in front of you. Should I still go to the meditation hall? Of course. Meditation is valuable. But bring to meditation the same presence you are learning to bring to washing dishes. And bring to washing dishes the same respect you give to meditation. They are not two different things. They are both opportunities to be fully awake in this moment. Sato bowed deeply. Thank you for your patience. I have been treating this work as punishment, as something keeping me from practice. I see now that it was practice all along. I was just not practicing. Eiji smiled. Every moment is an opportunity. When we create hierarchies about which moments are important and which are not, we waste half our lives waiting for the important ones. Zen teaches us that this moment, whatever it contains, is the only moment there is. Give yourself to it completely. This is the whole teaching. This story reveals how we create false hierarchies that cause us suffering. Sato had decided that meditation was sacred and washing dishes was mundane. Buddhism teaches that this kind of ranking separates us from our actual life. We spend so much time thinking about being somewhere better, doing something more important, that we miss the life we are actually living. The old masters often gave students mundane tasks precisely to help them see through this illusion. Chopping vegetables, cleaning floors, carrying water. These tasks had no inherent spiritual significance, which made them perfect for practicing presence. There was nothing impressive about them, so students could not use them to build up their spiritual ego. There was just the simple fact of doing what needed doing, which is the essence of practice. When we bring full attention to any task, no matter how simple or ordinary, we practice the same awareness we cultivate in meditation. Zen teaching shows us that the quality of attention matters more than the activity itself. Washing dishes with complete presence is more valuable than sitting in meditation while thinking about how spiritual you are. Let us explore another aspect of this teaching. A woman named Yori lived in a village and worked as a cleaner for several wealthy families. Each day she would go to their houses and sweep floors, dust shelves, wash windows, scrub pots, and tidy rooms. The work was tiring and not well paid. She would often feel discouraged, thinking her life lacked meaning compared to people with more important positions. One of the families she worked for had invited a visiting teacher to stay with them. His name was Master Hakuin, and he was known for his direct and practical approach to teaching. One afternoon, Yori was cleaning the guest room where Hakuin was staying. She worked quietly, not wanting to disturb him, but he noticed her and spoke. "You work with care," he said. Yori was startled. She had not expected him to address her. She bowed quickly. "Thank you, sir. I try to do my work properly." "Why do you clean houses?" he asked. "It is my livelihood. I have no other skills." "That is not what I asked. Why do you clean? What is the purpose of your work?" Yori thought about this. "To make things clean, I suppose. To keep the house orderly." "And why does that matter?" She found the question strange. "Because people cannot live well in dirty, disordered spaces. Clean surroundings create peace. They allow people to think clearly and live comfortably." Hakuin nodded. "So your work creates conditions for others to live well. You serve the peace and well-being of everyone in this household. How is this not sacred work?" Yori looked at him uncertainly. "But I am just a cleaner. This is ordinary work, not spiritual practice. The Buddha taught that right livelihood is part of the path. Work that serves others and causes no harm is spiritual practice. When you clean this room, you do it so I can rest well and teach clearly. When you clean the kitchen, you make it possible for the family to prepare nourishing meals. When you bring order to the household, you support everyone who lives here. This is compassionate action. This is Buddhism in daily life. He gestured around the room. Look at what you have done here. The floor is swept clean. The shelves are dusted. The bedding is fresh. You have created a peaceful space. Someone else will benefit from your care and effort. How can you call this unimportant? Yori felt tears rising unexpectedly. For years she had felt that her work was beneath notice, that her life lacked the significance of people with impressive positions or spiritual practices. But Hakuin was showing her that her daily work, when done with care and attention, was already spiritual practice. It was already service. It was already meaningful. But I do not meditate or study teachings, she said. I just clean houses. When you sweep this floor, are you thinking about other things? Or are you present for the sweeping? Usually I am thinking about other things. About my worries. About what I need to do next. About my life. There is your practice. Bring your full attention to your work. When you sweep, just sweep. When you dust, just dust. Let your work become your meditation. Not thinking about how your life should be different, but giving yourself completely to what you are actually doing. This is Zen practice. This is the path. Hakuin stood and walked to the window, which Yori had cleaned until it was perfectly clear. This window is so clean that I can see through it easily. I can appreciate the garden outside. Your care made this possible. You think this is just cleaning, but you have given me a gift. You have served my practice by creating a peaceful environment. Zen teaching reminds us that we all support each other. Your work supports my teaching. My teaching might support someone else's awakening. We are all connected in this web of service. After Hakuin left the room, Yori sat for a moment with what he had said. Her work was not separate from spiritual life. It was spiritual life. Every floor she swept, every dish she washed, every surface she cleaned, all of it created conditions for others to live well. All of it was service. All of it mattered. From that day forward, Yori approached her work differently. She still cleaned houses. The tasks remained the same. The floors still needed sweeping. The windows still needed washing. The shelves still needed dusting. But she brought a new quality of attention to them. At first, like Sato, she found it difficult. Her mind would wander back to its old patterns, thinking about her problems, worrying about money, feeling discouraged about her place in life. But each time she noticed her mind had drifted, she would gently bring her attention back to what she was actually doing. Back to the broom in her hands. Back to the cloth on the window. Back to this moment, this task. When she swept with care, making sure to clean thoroughly, getting into corners that she used to rush past. She found there was satisfaction in doing the work well, in knowing that she was truly serving the household. When she washed windows, she worked until they were perfectly clear, until someone looking through them would barely notice the glass was there. Each window became an opportunity to create clarity. When she organized shelves, she thought about the people who would use them. She placed items where they could be easily found, where they made sense, where they would bring ease to someone's day. This simple consideration, this care for others, turned organizing into an act of kindness. She stopped thinking of her work as something she had to get through and started seeing it as something she offered. Each clean room was a gift to the people who lived there. Each organized space created ease in their daily lives. Each window she washed let more light into someone's home. Her work mattered because it served others, and in serving others, she was practicing the compassion that Buddhism teaches. She also found that when she gave her full attention to her work, she felt more peaceful. The constant mental chatter about her inadequate life quieted down. The comparing of herself to others with more prestigious positions faded. She was simply here, cleaning, doing what needed doing. Her mind was not somewhere else, wishing things were different. It was present with her hands, her body, the task itself. And there was a surprising satisfaction in doing simple work well, in knowing that her effort made someone else's life better. When she finished cleaning a room and stepped back to look at it, she could feel a sense of completion. This room was clean because of her care. Someone would walk into it and feel peaceful because of her work. This was enough. This was meaningful. Years later, someone asked Yori if she had ever considered a different career, something more prestigious or better paid. Perhaps she could have learned a trade, they suggested, or worked in a shop where she would be more visible and respected. She smiled and said, "I have found my practice in ordinary work. I clean houses, and in cleaning houses, I practice presence, I serve others, and I find peace." The Buddha taught that any honest work done with care is part of the path. Why would I need something more impressive? This simple work is enough. It has given me what I was looking for, though I did not know I was looking for it. I am at peace with my life. How many people with impressive positions can say that? Both of these stories point to the same teaching. Buddhism shows us that we create unnecessary suffering when we rank our activities into important and unimportant, sacred and mundane. Every activity, no matter how simple or ordinary, becomes sacred when we bring full presence to it. Every moment of honest work done with care is spiritual practice. Zen masters have always emphasized this. They would tell students that carrying water is the same as chanting sutras, that chopping vegetables is the same as studying texts, that cleaning floors is the same as sitting in meditation. Not because these activities are identical in form, but because they all offer the same opportunity to be fully present, to serve with care, to practice awareness in action. The Buddha taught about right livelihood as part of the Eightfold Path. Work that serves others and causes no harm is not separate from spiritual practice. It is spiritual practice. A cleaner who brings full attention and care to their work is practicing Buddhism just as truly as a monk sitting in a meditation hall. The form is different, but the essence is the same, which is present awareness expressing itself through action. The sacred is not something we need to seek in special places or special practices. It is right here in our ordinary life, waiting for us to recognize it. When we stop dividing our life into spiritual moments and mundane moments, when we bring our whole attention to whatever we are actually doing, every moment becomes an opportunity for practice. Every activity becomes holy. Every task becomes a teacher. The Buddha taught his disciples to practice mindfulness in all activities: walking, standing, sitting, lying down, eating, drinking, speaking, working. Nothing was excluded. Nothing was considered too mundane for practice. He did not create a hierarchy where some activities were spiritual and others were not. All of life was the field of practice. This is the gift of ordinary mind. It shows us that we are always in the middle of our spiritual life, not waiting for it to begin. We only need to wake up to what we are actually doing and give it our complete attention. The dishes in the sink, the floor that needs sweeping, the work that waits for us, all of this is not keeping us from practice. It is the practice itself if we bring ourselves fully to it. Take a gentle breath now. Whatever activity you will do next, whether it seems important or mundane, see if you can bring your full attention to it. Let it be your practice. Let it be sacred simply because you are fully present for it. There is a quality that many people find disappointing when they first encounter real Zen teaching. They arrive expecting profound wisdom, mysterious koans, dramatic insights that will transform everything. What they often receive instead is simple, direct instruction that sounds almost too ordinary to be valuable. Drink your tea. Sweep the floor. Pay attention to what you are doing. A student once traveled for months to meet a famous master. When he finally arrived and asked for the deepest teaching, the master said, "Have you eaten breakfast?" The student said yes. The master replied, "Then go wash your bowl." The student was confused and frustrated. He had journeyed so far for this, but the master had given him exactly what he needed, though it would take years for him to understand it. Zen teaching points again and again to the ordinary as complete in itself, not as a stepping stone to something better, not as practice for some future attainment, but as already whole, already perfect, already enough. This is difficult for us to accept because we have learned to always reach for something more impressive, something special, something that will set us apart or make us feel significant. Buddhism teaches that this reaching itself creates suffering. We are never satisfied with what we have because we believe satisfaction lies in something we do not yet possess. We cannot rest in the ordinary because we have decided the ordinary is insufficient. We keep seeking the extraordinary, not realizing that the search itself prevents us from recognizing the completeness of what is already here. The highest teaching in Zen is sometimes called nothing special, not because it lacks depth or value, but because it points to reality as it actually is, stripped of our ideas about what it should be. When we stop adding our fantasies and expectations on top of life, what remains is simple, direct, and completely sufficient. There was once a student named Mina who had been practicing at a temple for 3 years. She was sincere and dedicated, attending every teaching session, sitting in meditation daily, studying the texts carefully. She had learned many sophisticated concepts about emptiness and Buddha nature and enlightenment. She could discuss these ideas with intelligence and insight. But Mina felt frustrated. Despite all her learning, despite her dedicated practice, she did not feel enlightened. She did not feel transformed. She still experienced ordinary thoughts and feelings, ordinary problems and concerns. She had expected that by now, after 3 years of serious practice, something dramatic would have shifted. She would feel different, special somehow, marked by her spiritual progress. The temple had a teacher named Master Fuji who lived in a small cottage at the edge of the grounds. He was very old now and rarely gave formal teachings anymore. But he was still respected as someone who had deep understanding, Mina decided to visit him and ask for guidance. Perhaps he could tell her what she was missing, what additional practice she needed to achieve the transformation she sought. She found him sitting outside his cottage in the afternoon sun, drinking tea. The setting was completely ordinary. No incense burning, no special cushions or altars. Just an old man sitting on a simple wooden bench with a cup of tea, watching birds move through the trees. Mina approached and bowed respectfully. "Master Fuji, may I speak with you?" "Of course." "Sit down. Would you like some tea?" Mina sat on the bench beside him. "Yes, thank you." He poured tea from a plain clay pot into a plain cup and handed it to her. The tea was simple green tea, nothing special. They sat quietly for a few moments, drinking. Mina waited for him to ask why she had come, but he seemed content to just sit and drink tea. Finally, Mina spoke. "Master, I have been practicing here for 3 years. I meditate every day. I study the teachings. I follow the precepts, but I do not feel any different than when I arrived. I thought spiritual practice would transform me, that I would achieve some special state of peace or wisdom. But I still feel like the same ordinary person I always was. What am I doing wrong?" Master Fuji sipped his tea slowly. "What did you hope to become?" "I do not know exactly. Someone wiser, more peaceful. Someone who has transcended ordinary concerns and touched something deeper." "I see. And right now, sitting here drinking tea, what are you experiencing?" Mina paused. "I am sitting here with you, drinking tea, feeling the warmth of the sun, hearing the birds. Is this not enough? But this is just ordinary experience. This is not enlightenment." Master Fuji smiled. "Who told you enlightenment is something other than ordinary experience? Who said it must be dramatic or special, or make you feel transformed?" "Well, all the stories about the masters. Their great insights. Their awakening experiences. Surely enlightenment is something extraordinary. The stories you have heard, they make enlightenment sound impressive because stories require drama to be interesting. But the actual experience the masters pointed to is nothing dramatic at all. It is exactly this." He gestured to the tea, the afternoon, the simple fact of sitting here. Just this, without adding anything to it, without needing it to be special. Mina felt confused. "But I have been doing this my whole life. Drinking tea, sitting in the sun. If this is enlightenment, why did I need 3 years of practice?" "You have been sitting and drinking tea, yes. But have you been doing it without wanting it to be something else? Without judging it as insufficient? Without using it as an opportunity to think about more important things?" He looked at her directly. "Right now, as you drink this tea, are you actually tasting it? Or are you thinking about enlightenment and whether you have achieved it?" Mina realized he was right. Even now, sitting here, she was not really present. She was thinking about her practice, her progress, what she was lacking. She was using this moment to worry about other moments, to plan, to evaluate, to judge. She was here in body, but not in attention. Zen teaching shows us that the problem is not that we lack something special. The problem is that we cannot appreciate the ordinary because we are always reaching for something beyond it. Master Fuji finished his tea and set down the cup. You have spent 3 years practicing, which is good. But you have been practicing to become someone special rather than to fully be who you already are. You have been practicing to achieve extraordinary states rather than to wake up to ordinary life. But then what is the point of practice? Meena asked. If I am already everything I need to be, why practice at all? Practice helps you see what you already have. It clears away the confusion that prevents you from recognizing the completeness of this moment. But if you practice while thinking, practice will give you something you do not already possess. You miss the point entirely. The Buddha taught that all beings already have Buddha nature. Practice does not create it. Practice reveals it. He poured more tea into both their cups. Watch how the tea pours. See how it steams. Notice the color, the scent, the warmth of the cup in your hands. This is not special. This is completely ordinary. And it is also completely enough. When you can drink tea and just drink tea, without needing it to be a pathway to enlightenment, without judging it as too ordinary, without wanting something more impressive, then you will understand what the old masters were pointing at. Meena looked at the tea in her cup. She had drunk thousands of cups of tea in her life, but had never truly tasted one. She was always drinking tea while thinking about something else, planning the next thing, judging the present as insufficient. Even her meditation practice had become this way. She sat in meditation while judging her meditation, thinking about whether she was doing it correctly, wanting to have special experiences. She lifted the cup and took a sip, just tasting, just this moment of warmth and flavor, not making it into anything, not needing it to be profound or transformative, just tea being tea and herself tasting it. It was nothing special, and in being nothing special, it was complete. The highest teaching is the simplest teaching, Master Fuji said quietly. When you are tired, rest. When you are thirsty, drink. When you walk, walk. When you sit, sit. Do not seek anything beyond what you are actually doing. This is hard for people to accept because it does not make them feel special. But it is the truth that sets you free. Over the following weeks and months, Meena began to practice differently. She stopped trying to achieve special states in meditation and simply sat, being present for whatever arose. Sometimes her meditation was peaceful. Sometimes it was restless and uncomfortable. She stopped judging one as good practice and the other as bad practice. She simply sat, meeting whatever came. When thoughts arose about whether she was making progress, she noticed these thoughts without getting caught in them. When feelings of frustration or disappointment appeared, she let them be there without trying to fix them or push them away. She was learning to be present for her actual experience rather than the experience she thought she should be having. In daily life, she paid attention to simple things she had overlooked for years. The feeling of her feet on the ground as she walked, the taste of her food at meals, the sound of rain on the roof. Not because these things were profound or would lead to enlightenment, but simply because they were what was actually happening. She found that when she could stop adding her commentary and expectations to life, when she could let things be what they were without needing them to be impressive, there was a quality of peace that had been there all along, hidden under her constant striving for something better. The peace was not dramatic. It was not a special state. It was just the natural quiet that arose when her mind stopped fighting with reality. She continued to meditate, study, and practice. But now she was not practicing to become someone special. She was practicing to fully inhabit her ordinary life, her ordinary mind, her ordinary experience. And in that ordinariness, she found what she had been seeking in extraordinary experiences. Not because the ordinary had become extraordinary, but because she had stopped needing it to be anything other than what it was. She noticed that other students were still caught in the same trap she had been caught in. They would compare their progress to others. They would judge their meditation sessions as good or bad. They would talk about achieving enlightenment as if it were a prize to be won through effort. She understood now that this approach itself prevented them from seeing what was already here. One day, she returned to visit Master Fuji. She found him in the same place, sitting outside with tea, watching the afternoon unfold. The scene was identical to their first meeting. Nothing had changed externally, but everything had changed in how she met it. "Master, thank you for showing me what I could not see." He looked up and smiled. "I showed you nothing. It was always there. You only needed to stop looking past it for something more impressive. I understand now what you meant by nothing special. It is not that practice lacks value or depth. It is that the deepest truth is so simple and ordinary that we overlook it constantly. We think it must be somewhere else, something more impressive. Yes, people want enlightenment to make them special, to set them apart, to give them something others do not have. But real understanding is the opposite. It is seeing that there is nothing special needed, nothing extra required. Just this ordinary awareness, this ordinary moment, this ordinary life fully met. This is enough. This has always been enough." He poured tea for both of them. "You know, people often ask me what changed when I understood the teaching. They expect me to describe some dramatic transformation. But the truth is that nothing changed and everything changed. I still sit here drinking tea. I still watch the birds. I still have an ordinary body that gets tired and an ordinary mind that thinks thoughts. But I stopped fighting with the ordinariness of it. I stopped needing it to be special. And in that acceptance, I found a peace that does not depend on circumstances being extraordinary." They sat together in comfortable silence, drinking tea in the afternoon sun. Two ordinary people having an ordinary afternoon. Nothing special. Everything complete. Buddhism teaches that our constant reaching for something more, something special, something that will finally satisfy us, is the source of much suffering. This reaching takes us away from the life we actually have. Zen masters would often respond to profound questions with very ordinary statements, precisely to cut through this habit of seeking the extraordinary. A monk asks, "What is the meaning of Buddhism?" The master replies, "The oak tree in the garden." The monk is confused because he expects a philosophical answer, something impressive. But the master is pointing to simple presence with what is actually here. The oak tree is just an oak tree. Buddhism is just this moment, just this awareness, just this life as it actually is. The teaching of nothing special liberates us from the exhausting search for special experiences, special states, special understanding. We can stop trying to be impressive and simply be present. We can stop judging ordinary life as insufficient and recognize its completeness. This does not mean we stop growing or learning. It means we stop treating the present as a problem that needs solving through future attainment. Here is another story that shows this teaching. In a small mountain village, there lived a warrior named Kuro who had trained in swordsmanship since childhood. He was skilled and disciplined, respected for his abilities. But despite his training, he did not feel at peace. In battle, his mind would become agitated. He would second-guess his movements. He would worry about the outcome even as he fought. Kuro heard of a swordsman named Takeshi who lived as a farmer in a remote valley. People said that Takeshi had once been a great warrior but had given up fighting to work the land. They also said that Takeshi possessed a secret understanding that made him unbeatable in combat, though he no longer sought combat. Kuro was curious. What understanding could a farmer have that a trained warrior lacked? He traveled to the valley and found Takeshi working in a rice field. The man was older, perhaps 50, with the weathered face and strong hands of someone who worked with soil. He was planting rice seedlings, moving steadily through the flooded field, pressing each small plant into the mud with careful attention. Kuro waited at the edge of the field until Takeshi noticed him. The farmer straightened and waded to shore. "Can I help you?" Takeshi asked. "I am looking for the swordsman Takeshi. I was told he lives here." "I am Takeshi. Though I have not held a sword in 15 years, I have come to learn from you. I am a warrior, but I lack peace in combat. My mind is troubled even as I fight. I heard that you possess special understanding." Takeshi smiled and looked back at his rice field. "I possess no special understanding. I plant rice. I harvest rice. I eat rice. This is my life now. But you were known as unbeatable. What was your secret?" "There was no secret. I simply fought without thinking about fighting. When I saw an opening, I moved. When I needed to defend, I defended. My mind did not interfere with my body's natural response. That is all." "But how did you achieve this? What practice allows the mind to become so clear?" Takeshi gestured to the rice field. "This practice, planting rice. When I plant, I am just planting. My mind is not elsewhere. It is here, with my hands, with the seedlings, with the mud. This is the same mind I used in combat. Not a special mind, just a mind that is present for what it is actually doing." Kuro felt disappointed. "But that is just ordinary work. That is not a warrior's practice. You asked me about peace in combat. I am telling you the truth. The mind that plants rice peacefully is the same mind that fights peacefully. There is no special warrior mind separate from ordinary mind. When you fight while thinking you need a special state of mind, you create conflict within yourself. When you simply fight, responding naturally to what the moment requires, there is no inner conflict. The mind is quiet because it is not arguing with reality. Will you teach me? I can show you rice planting. Whether this teaches you anything is up to you." Kuro stayed in the valley for 2 months. Each day, he worked beside Takeshi in the fields. At first, his mind was busy with frustration. This was not what he had come to learn. He was a warrior, not a farmer. He wanted secret techniques, special training methods, insights into combat that would give him an advantage. Not muddy work in rice fields that seemed completely unrelated to swordsmanship. He would plant the seedlings while his mind complained. "This is a waste of time. I should be training with my sword. What does rice farming have to do with combat?" His body was in the field, but his attention was elsewhere, arguing with the situation, judging it as wrong. But gradually, as the days passed and he continued working, something began to shift. One morning, he woke early and went to the field as usual. The sun was just rising, casting long shadows across the water. The air was cool and fresh. He began planting and found that for a few moments, his mind was not arguing. There was just the field, the seedlings, the mud, his hands. No story about what this should be or what he should be learning. Just this moment, this task. The feeling did not last long. Soon his thoughts returned, commenting and judging. But he had glimpsed something. A quality of simple presence that he rarely accessed in his warrior training, where he was always trying to be better, faster, more skilled. As the weeks continued, those moments of simple presence became more frequent. He noticed that when his mind was quiet like this, his body knew what to do. His hands found their rhythm without his thinking about rhythm. He could sense when a seedling was planted firmly and when it needed adjustment, not through analysis, but through direct perception. He was responding to what was actually happening rather than what he thought should be happening. He began to see that this was exactly what Takeshi had meant about combat. In fighting, when his mind was busy with thoughts about winning or losing, about how he looked or what others thought, about fear or pride, his natural capacity to respond was blocked. But when he could simply be present for what was actually happening, his training could express itself naturally. One evening, after a long day of work, they were washing mud from their hands and feet. Kuro said to Takeshi, "I am beginning to understand. The peace I sought in combat is the same peace I find when I can simply plant rice without my mind creating problems. When I stop fighting against what I am doing and just do it, everything becomes simpler." Takeshi nodded. Buddhism teaches that our suffering comes from our mind fighting against reality. When planting rice, if your mind says this work is beneath you or this is not what you came to learn, you suffer. When fighting, if your mind says you should not feel afraid or you must win or you must perform perfectly, you suffer. The activity does not create the suffering. Your mind's resistance creates it. So the practice is simply to be present for what I am actually doing, without my mind adding commentary or judgment. That is it. Nothing special. Just this moment, fully met. When you fight with this mind, you do not fight from fear or pride or the need to prove something. You simply respond to what the situation requires. This is what people saw in my swordsmanship. Not special technique, but simple presence. I was not trying to be impressive. I was just doing what needed doing. But this seems too simple to be the answer. Surely there must be more to it than just being present. Takeshi laughed. That is what everyone says. We want the answer to be complicated and impressive because that would make us feel special for understanding it. But the Buddha taught very simple truths. Be present. Respond with compassion. These are not complicated teachings. They are difficult to practice because we keep making them complicated with our thinking. We add layers of philosophy and technique on top of something that is actually very direct. He looked at Kuro seriously. You came here seeking a special mind for combat. But there is no special mind. There is only mind. When that mind is present and not interfering with itself, it functions naturally. A warrior's mind, a farmer's mind, an ordinary person's mind, they are all the same mind. The difference is only in whether we are present for our experience or lost in our thoughts about our experience. When Kuro returned to his duties as a warrior, he brought with him what he had learned planting rice. In combat, he no longer tried to achieve a special state of mind. He did not judge his thoughts or feelings as good or bad. He did not try to suppress fear or manufacture courage. He simply allowed his training to express itself naturally while staying present for what was actually happening. His movements became more fluid. His decisions became clearer. Not because he had learned special techniques, but because he had stopped interfering with his natural capacity to respond. He fought the same way he had learned to plant rice, with simple attention to what was actually required in each moment. People noticed the change and asked him what training he had undergone, what master had taught him such skill. Kuro would smile and say, "I learned to plant rice. And in learning to plant rice, I learned that the mind I need in combat is the same mind I use for any ordinary task. Nothing special. Just presence. Just this." Some people were disappointed by this answer. They wanted to hear about secret techniques or special insights, but a few understood what he was pointing to, that the peace and clarity they sought was not in some extraordinary state, but in simple presence with ordinary life. Both stories point to the same teaching. We seek something special, something that will make us different or better or finally satisfied. Buddhism shows us that what we seek is already here in our ordinary experience, our ordinary awareness, our ordinary life. The problem is not that we lack something special, but that we cannot see the value of what is ordinary. Zen masters have always emphasized this. The highest teaching is nothing special, precisely because it is simply what is true. Tea tastes like tea. Rice grows in fields. Awareness is aware. We do not need to add anything to this or make it into something impressive. It is already complete. When we can let our ordinary life be ordinary without judgment, without comparison, without needing it to be special, we discover a peace that does not depend on circumstances being extraordinary. We can find completeness in simple moments. We can rest in ordinary awareness. This is the gift of nothing special. It shows us that we already have everything we need. Take a gentle breath now. This moment is nothing special. It is just this moment. And in being just this moment, it is already complete. Let yourself rest here, in the ordinary miracle of being alive. We have walked together through many facets of ordinary mind tonight. We have seen how it asks us to respond naturally rather than complicating the simple. How it shows us that what we seek is already present in our everyday awareness. How daily tasks and spiritual practice are not two different things. All of these point to one understanding. The life you are living right now, with all its ordinary moments and simple tasks, is not preparation for some future spiritual attainment. It is not a waiting room where you mark time until real life begins. This is it. This ordinary life, this ordinary mind, this ordinary moment, already whole, already complete, already home. Buddhism teaches that we suffer not because we lack something essential, but because we do not recognize what we already have. We are like someone searching everywhere for glasses that are resting on their own head. The searching itself prevents us from noticing that what we seek is already with us, has always been with us. could never be anywhere else. Zen masters spent their lives pointing at this simple truth in countless ways. When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. The oak tree in the garden. Ordinary mind is the way. Not because they lacked profound insights, but because the most profound insight is simply this: what you are looking for is what is looking. The awareness seeking peace is already peaceful. The mind searching for completion is already complete. This is not a concept to understand intellectually. It is something to recognize in your own experience. Not in special moments, but in the most ordinary ones. Not when you finally get everything right, but right now, exactly as things are. The invitation is to stop waiting for a better moment and fully arrive in this one. There is a story about this. An old teacher named Senzo had lived in a small temple for 40 years. He was not famous. He did not give elaborate teachings or attract many students. He simply lived his life, tending the temple grounds, offering tea to travelers who stopped by, sitting quietly in the evening. People in the nearby village knew him as a kind and peaceful presence, but most did not consider him particularly remarkable. One day, a young monk named Hiroshi arrived at the temple. Hiroshi had been traveling for years, studying with various masters, learning different meditation techniques, accumulating knowledge about Buddhist philosophy. He had read extensively and could discuss the sutras with great sophistication. But despite all his learning, he felt something was missing. He kept thinking that if he just found the right teacher or learned the right technique, everything would finally click into place. He had heard a rumor about Senzo, though he was not sure if it was true. Someone had told him that this old temple keeper had profound understanding but refused to teach formally. Hiroshi was skeptical. How could someone living so simply, doing such ordinary work, have anything important to share? But he was passing through the area anyway, so he decided to stop and see for himself. He found Senzo sweeping leaves from the temple steps. The old man looked up and smiled. "Welcome. You look like you have traveled far." "I have been studying with various teachers," Hiroshi said. "I came to see if you might have teaching to share." Senzo leaned his broom against the wall. "Come, have some tea. You must be tired." They went inside to a simple room. Senzo prepared tea with careful attention, not making a ceremony of it, but simply making tea the way someone does who has made tea thousands of times. He poured for both of them, and they sat quietly. After a few moments, Hiroshi spoke. "I have heard that you have deep understanding, but you do not teach formally or take students. Why is that?" Senzo sipped his tea. "What is there to teach? I sweep leaves when they fall. I make tea when someone comes. I sit quietly when the day's work is done. This is my life. Where in this would I need to give formal teachings? But surely you have insights to share, understanding that could help others. If I told you that peace is right here in this moment, would you believe me? Or would you think you need to do something special to achieve that peace?" Hiroshi hesitated. "I suppose I would think I need to practice more, to develop understanding." "And there is the problem," Senzo said gently. "You already have what you are seeking, but you cannot see it because you keep looking past it. This tea you are drinking right now, the warmth of the cup in your hands, the taste, the simple fact of sitting here, this is not leading somewhere. This is already where you need to be. But this is just drinking tea. This is not enlightenment. Senzo smiled. Who told you enlightenment is something other than this? Who said it must feel special or look impressive? The Buddha taught that all beings possess Buddha nature, not that they will possess it after years of practice. They already have it. The question is whether they can recognize it in their ordinary experience. He refilled both their cups. You have been traveling for years, seeking teaching, and I am sure you have learned valuable things. But has all that seeking brought you peace? Or has it just convinced you that peace is always somewhere else, with some other teacher, after some other practice? Hiroshi felt something stir in him. It was true. Each teacher he studied with had something valuable to offer, but he always left thinking the real teaching was somewhere else. Each technique he learned seemed promising at first, but then he would hear about a different technique that sounded better. He had been seeking for so long that seeking had become his identity. He did not know how to stop. How did you learn to be content with such a simple life? Hiroshi asked. I did not learn contentment. I stopped creating discontent. That is different. For many years, I was like you. I studied and practiced and sought understanding. I believed that if I just worked hard enough, I would achieve something special. But the harder I tried, the more exhausted I became. Finally, I was so tired that I simply stopped. And in that stopping, I noticed something. What did you notice? That the life I was living while seeking something better was already complete. That the mind I was trying to improve was already functioning perfectly. That the moment I was rushing through to get to the next moment already contained everything I needed. I did not need to become someone different. I only needed to stop fighting with who I already was. Senzo stood and walked to the window. Outside, birds were moving through the trees. Look at those birds. They do not practice being birds. They simply are birds, completely and naturally. When they are hungry, they look for food. When they are tired, they rest. They do not worry about whether they are being good birds or achieving their bird potential. They simply live. He turned back to Hiroshi. Zen teaching points us toward this same naturalness. Not the thoughtless existence of animals, but the natural functioning of human awareness when we stop interfering with it. You do not need to become enlightened. You need to stop pretending you are not already what you are. Hiroshi sat with this for a long moment. Can I stay here for a while? Not to learn from you formally, but just to be here? Of course. There is always work to do. Leaves to sweep. Vegetables to tend. Meals to prepare. You are welcome to help with any of it. Hiroshi stayed at the temple for 3 months. Each day, he helped Senzo with the simple tasks of maintaining the place. Sweeping, cleaning, cooking, repairing things that broke, working in the small garden. Nothing impressive or spiritual, just ordinary work done with ordinary attention. At first, Hiroshi kept waiting for the real teaching to begin. Surely Senzo would eventually sit him down and share profound insights. Surely there would be special meditation instructions or deep philosophical discussions. But the old teacher just went about his life. He would make comments sometimes while they worked, small observations about what they were doing or what was happening around them, but nothing that seemed like formal teaching. Hiroshi found this frustrating. He had traveled so far, studied with so many teachers. Here he was with someone who supposedly had deep understanding, and all they did was sweep leaves and prepare meals. His mind would argue as he worked. This is wasting time. I should be meditating or studying texts. How is chopping vegetables supposed to lead to enlightenment? But as the days passed, something subtle began to shift. He noticed that when he was caught in this mental argument, the work felt like a burden. Time moved slowly. He felt restless and dissatisfied. But occasionally, his mind would quiet. He would simply be chopping vegetables, his attention fully absorbed in the task. The knife moving through the carrot, the clean sound of each cut, the pile of sliced vegetables growing. In those moments, time disappeared. There was just this, and there was a peace in it that his years of formal practice had rarely given him. He began to notice how Senzo worked. The old man never seemed to rush, but he also never seemed to waste motion. When sweeping, he swept thoroughly, giving attention to corners that Hiroshi would have overlooked. When preparing tea, he moved with care, not making a ceremony of it, but simply doing each action fully. When someone from the village stopped by to talk, Senzo gave them his complete attention, not thinking about what he needed to do next. There was something in the way Senzo lived that Hiroshi had never seen in any teacher. It was not impressive. It was not dramatic. But there was a completeness to it, a quality of being fully present for whatever was happening, that Hiroshi had been seeking without knowing what he was seeking. Gradually, Hiroshi began to notice something. When he was fully engaged in the work, when his mind was not somewhere else thinking about practice or progress, there was a quality of peace that arose naturally. Not because the work was special, but because his mind was not fighting with the situation. He was simply here, doing this, now. His years of meditation practice had given him tools, yes, but he had been using those tools to try to achieve something rather than to simply be present. One morning, he was raking the garden while Senzo planted new seedlings. The work was quiet and absorbing. At some point, Hiroshi realized he had not thought about enlightenment or progress for over an hour. He had just been raking. His mind was clear and his body was engaged. This was what he had been seeking through all those techniques and teachings. Not a special state, but simple presence with ordinary activity. One evening, they were sitting outside after dinner, watching the sun set behind the mountains. The sky was painted with orange and pink. Hiroshi said, "I think I am beginning to understand what you meant. You have been teaching me all along. Not through words, but through how you live. Through showing me that peace is not in special practices, but in how we meet ordinary moments." Senzo nodded. The teaching is not separate from living. Buddhism is not something you do for an hour each day and then set aside. It is how you meet each moment, how you respond to what arises, how you treat yourself and others, how you work and rest and simply be. But you make it look so easy. You are at peace with such a simple life. I still feel like I want more, like there should be something more impressive or meaningful. That wanting will fade as you see through it. Right now, you still believe that impressive things are more valuable than simple things, that your life should look a certain way to be meaningful. But these are just ideas your mind has learned. They are not true. A simple life fully lived is no less valuable than an impressive life half-lived. The value is not in what you do, but in how present you are for whatever you are doing. He looked at Hiroshi with kind eyes. You came here seeking teaching, and I think you found what you needed, though it was not what you expected. You learned that you do not need to keep seeking. You can stop and be here. Your ordinary mind, doing ordinary things, experiencing ordinary life. This is already complete. What should I do now? Should I stay and continue practicing here? That is up to you. But understand that if you leave, you take the teaching with you. It is not in this place or with me. It is in how you meet your life wherever you are. If you sweep leaves here or sweep leaves somewhere else, the practice is the same. Just sweep leaves. Do not sweep while thinking about enlightenment or comparing yourself to others or judging whether this is valuable. Just sweep. I think I need to return to the world, to see if I can live this way in the midst of ordinary life, not just in the peace of this temple. Senzo smiled. That is wise. The temple is a good place to learn, but the real practice is everywhere. In cities and villages, in work and family, in all the complexity of human life. What you have learned here is just a beginning. When Hiroshi eventually left the temple, he did not leave seeking something else. He had found what he came for, which was the recognition that he already had what he needed. The years of seeking had not been wasted. They had brought him to this understanding. But now he could stop seeking and start living. He returned to a temple where he had once studied and asked if he could help with the daily work. He spent his days cooking, cleaning, tending gardens, helping with whatever needed doing. People who had known him before noticed a change. He seemed more settled, more at peace. When they asked what teaching he had received from his travels, he would smile and say, I learned that the life I was living while seeking something better was already complete. That this ordinary mind is enough. That each moment is the arrival I was seeking. Buddhism teaches that enlightenment is not about achieving a special state, but about recognizing what is already true. The Zen masters did not spend decades in practice to become something they were not. They practiced to see through the illusions that prevented them from recognizing what they already were. This is why the teaching keeps pointing back to ordinary life. Not because ordinary life leads to enlightenment, but because ordinary life, fully met, is the expression of enlightenment. There is nowhere else to look, nothing else to achieve. Just this moment, this breath, this ordinary awareness. All the teachings we have explored tonight are really one teaching looked at from different sides. When hungry, eat. Your everyday mind is the path. Before enlightenment, chop wood. The sacred in the mundane. Nothing special. The tea is just tea. They all say the same thing. Stop looking elsewhere. Stop waiting for something better. Be here, fully here, for this ordinary life. This is already it. There is one more story that can help bring this home. A woman named Sumiko had spent 20 years as a student of Zen. She had practiced diligently, studying extensively, sitting through countless meditation retreats. She had practiced through joy and sorrow, through clarity and confusion. She had moments of deep insight and periods of profound peace. But she also had moments of doubt and periods of struggle. Through it all, she kept practicing, kept seeking, kept trying to deepen her understanding. For many years, she had imagined that enlightenment would arrive as a dramatic event, One day, she would sit down to meditate, and suddenly everything would click into place. The seeking would end. The questions would be answered. She would finally feel like she had arrived at what she had been working toward for 2 decades. But as the years passed, this dramatic event never came. She had insights, yes. Moments of clarity where she understood something she had not understood before. But always, after the insight faded, she was still herself. Still the same person with the same ordinary mind, the same daily concerns, the same mixture of peace and struggle. One day, she was sitting in meditation during a long retreat. The meditation hall was quiet. Everyone was sitting still. Nothing special was happening. Her mind was neither particularly peaceful nor particularly agitated. Just ordinary mind doing ordinary meditation. And in that ordinariness, something clicked. She realized something that made her laugh, though she kept it quiet out of respect for the others meditating. She had spent 20 years trying to be someone different, someone more spiritual, someone who had achieved understanding. But the person doing all that seeking was already who she needed to be. Her ordinary mind, the awareness that had been with her through every meditation session and every moment of daily life, was already complete. She had been carrying what she sought the entire time. It was like suddenly seeing her own face after years of looking everywhere else for it. How could she have missed something so obvious? The awareness that noticed her breath in meditation was the same awareness that tasted her food at meals, that heard sounds, that experienced everything. It had never been lacking anything. It had never needed to become different. She had just been looking past it, through it, beyond it, thinking enlightenment must be something more special. This realization did not arrive with dramatic fanfare. There were no lights or visions or overwhelming feelings. It was more like noticing something obvious that had been hidden in plain sight. Like realizing you have been wearing your glasses while searching for them. Simple, undramatic, but complete. After this, her practice did not change much externally. She still meditated. She still worked and ate and slept and went about her daily life. She still had good days and difficult days. She still made mistakes and learned from them. But internally, something had shifted. She was no longer practicing to become someone else. She was simply being who she was, responding to each moment as it came. The seeking had ended not because she had achieved something, but because she had seen through the assumption that she needed to achieve something. The Buddha had taught that all beings possess Buddha nature. Not would possess it, not could possess it, if they worked hard enough, but already possess it. She had finally understood what this meant. Not as a concept, but as lived reality. When younger students would ask her for guidance, she found it difficult to explain what had changed. How could she describe seeing something that had always been there? How could she point at something so ordinary and immediate that pointing seemed to create more distance rather than less? She would usually say something simple. Be kind to yourself. Be present for your life. Trust that you already have what you need. Buddhism teaches that you are not broken and do not need fixing. You only need to stop believing you are broken. But she knew that these words, like all words about ordinary mind, could not give someone the recognition directly. Each person had to see it for themselves, in their own time, in their own way. What she could do was live in a way that demonstrated the teaching. Not through being impressive or special, but through being fully present for ordinary life. through meeting each person with attention, through doing simple tasks with care, through not needing anything to be different than it was, through showing that a life of practice did not make you special or set you apart, but brought you more fully into simple human presence. People would sometimes say to her, "You seem so peaceful. What practice do you do?" She would smile and say, "I wash dishes when dishes need washing. I work when work needs doing. I rest when I am tired. This is my practice." Zen teaching shows us that the secret is there is no secret. Just this ordinary life, fully lived. Buddhism teaches that the best teaching is often silent. The way someone lives their life speaks more clearly than any words they might say. When you meet someone who is at peace with their ordinary life, who does not need things to be special or impressive, who brings full presence to simple moments, something transmits that cannot be put into words. You feel the possibility of living that way yourself. This is what the old masters offered. Not complicated philosophy or special techniques, but a demonstration of human life fully lived. Ordinary mind in action. Nothing held back. Nothing performed. Just presence. Just response. Just this. As we complete this exploration of ordinary mind, you might notice that everything we have discussed is available to you right now. You do not need to achieve anything or become anyone different. The awareness that has been listening to these words is the same awareness the Buddha had, the same awareness all the masters cultivated. It is already here, already functioning, already complete. The practice is not to create this awareness, but to recognize it and trust it. To stop looking past it for something more special. To meet your ordinary life with the understanding that it is already sacred, already whole, already enough. Tomorrow, you will wake up. You will do ordinary things. You will have ordinary thoughts and feelings. You will face ordinary challenges. All of this is your practice. All of this is the path. Not leading somewhere else, but already complete in itself. When you drink tea, let the tea be just tea. When you walk, let walking be just walking. When you work, let work be work. Not as a technique to achieve something, but as a simple recognition that this moment, exactly as it is already where you need to be. This is ordinary mind. Not an achievement, but a recognition. Not a destination, but an arrival at where you have always been. Not something special, but the ordinary miracle of being alive, fully met, completely here. Take a gentle breath now. Feel yourself resting in this moment. Nothing to achieve. Nowhere to go. Just this. Just here. Just now. Already home. As we come to the end of our time together tonight, take a moment to notice where you are. Feel the surface supporting you. Notice the gentle rhythm of your breath moving in and out without any effort from you. Tonight, we have explored ordinary mind through many stories and teachings. We have seen how it invites us to respond naturally to life, to recognize what we already possess, to see that the sacred and mundane are not separate, to let go of seeking something special. All of these point to one simple truth. This ordinary life, this ordinary awareness, this ordinary moment is already complete. The Buddha taught that all beings possess Buddha nature, not as something to achieve, but as something to recognize. Zen masters spent their lives pointing at this in countless ways, always trying to show us what is so close we overlook it. Your ordinary mind is the path. When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. The tea is just tea. You do not need to remember everything we explored tonight. The seeds have been planted. They will grow in their own time. You may find yourself tomorrow meeting an ordinary moment with new eyes, recognizing the completeness of something simple, letting something be what it is without needing it to be more. As you drift towards sleep now, let everything soften. Let the day release its hold. Let your body rest completely in the knowledge that tomorrow will bring its own fresh beginning. You will wake to an ordinary morning, ready to meet it with your ordinary mind, which has always been enough. This ordinary life is your practice. These ordinary moments are your path. This ordinary awareness is already home. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.